amazing listeners and fellow adventurers. I hope you're all bubbling with as much joy as I am right now. Ooh, you won't believe what happened to me this morning. I was trying to recreate that viral pancake art trend. You know, where they make perfect little designs. Well, mine ended up looking like a modern art piece titled Explosion in a Butter Factory. My kitchen resembled a crime scene, only the victim was my artistic pride. Oops, but hey, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at, right?
Mira, I saw the art installation in your kitchen. I thought you'd finally invented a new breakfast cereal exploded pancake bits. Honestly, I'm just glad no actual batter flew into the studio. We already have enough unidentifiable stains. You truly are a master of turning domestic disasters into content. Wow. To all our listeners on YouTube, if you enjoy this kind of organized chaos, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe.
Oh, come on, Leo. My energy keeps us all going. And speaking of unexpected journeys, today we're taking you on a wild ride to countries that truly embody the phrase opposites attract. We're talking about the vibrant, sun-drenched, taco-infused world of Mexico and the, shall we say, uniquely structured and incredibly mysterious nation of North Korea. Wow.
Yeah, one's got a party in every street, the other's got well, let's just say a very strict curfew. For anyone out there pondering if they should learn to salsa or master the art of synchronized marching, this podcast is for you. We're here to cut through the noise, the rumors, and the occasional awkward silence to give you a real sense of what makes these places tick.
Are you dreaming of a colorful wedding fiesta? Or perhaps a quietly contemplative life? We're going to answer all those burning questions you have about living, working, traveling, or even, dare I say, marrying someone from these incredibly distinct cultures. Ooh, if you're struggling to decide where your next big adventure lies, or even just where to find the best street food versus, well, a very specific state-approved meal plan, you're in the right place.
We'll dive deep into everything from everyday life and cultural nuances to the economy and what kind of adventure you can truly expect. Because let's be honest, an adventure in Mexico might involve a spontaneous mariachi band, while an adventure in North Korea might involve trying to find a coffee shop that isn't government run. And this isn't just a comparison, it's your comprehensive guide, meticulously put together to help you make truly informed decisions.
Yes, indeed. Think of us as your personal travel consultants, but with more jokes and fewer brochures. We're going to help you unpack all the details so you can confidently pick the country that perfectly matches your vibe. Oh, whether you're a thrill seeker, a culture lover, or just someone who enjoys a good story, you're going to find something here that sparks your interest.
And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It tells us you appreciate the nuanced differences between, say, a bustling Mexican market and a perfectly orderly North Korean parade. Your support helps us keep these conversations going, dissecting the bizarre and the beautiful, one country comparison at a time. So settle in, maybe grab a coffee. I know I have, and let's get ready to explore.
Get ready, because the revelations are about to begin. Wow, we promised it'll be an eye-opening journey. Alright, speaking of things that surprise us on our travels, let's dive into a topic that's always on people's minds, especially when they're planning an adventure: general safety and crime rates. And today, we're pitting two fascinating countries against each other: Mexico and North Korea. Wow, talk about a contrast, right? It's like comparing a vibrant salsa party to a very, very quiet library.
So, I think that we can conquer that. Mira, you always find the most unique pairings. A quiet librarian is always watching you, even if you just think about whispering. You know, when I think about safety, my mind immediately goes to whether I can walk around at 3 a.m. looking for street food without getting my camera swiped. Not that I ever do that, of course. Whoa, I'm purely hypothetically asking for a friend.
Let's talk about general safety and crime rates because, well, these two countries are, shall we say, on entirely different planets when it comes to what safe even means. Oh, Mexico, a land of vibrant culture and incredible food, and then North Korea, which is, well, it certainly has a very distinct approach to public order.
Distinct is one word for it, Mir. I'd say one offers a thrilling adventure and the other offers a thrilling lack of choices. When you talk about Mexico, people often think of sun tacos. And well, sometimes the headlines get a bit pissier than the salsa. Oops. It's like, you want to grab a churro, but you're also wondering if you should be wearing a bulletproof vest.
Oh, come on, Leo. You're making it sound like an action movie. While some areas in Mexico do have challenges, especially with organized crime, it's really about knowing where you are. Wow. Tourist zones like Cancun, Playa del Carmen, or Los Cabos, they're generally very safe with a strong police presence. It's like any big city anywhere, right? You keep your wits about you, don't flash your valuables, and you're usually fine. For our listeners thinking about a trip, I'm certain many who visited Mexperiences are absolutely wonderful.
True, Mira. But that's like saying a library is safe if you stay in the children's section. Whoa. There are areas in Mexico where wandering off the beaten path isn't just an adventure, it's a plot twist. Petty crime, like pickpocketing, is definitely a thing in crowded markets or on public transport. So keep that phone in your front pocket, folks. It's less about whether you'll accidentally eat too many spicy peppers and more about whether your wallet will mysteriously vanish.
Well, speaking of things vanishing, let's pivot to North Korea, where personal belongings probably don't vanish. But personal freedoms certainly do. In terms of reported crime rates for tourists, it's practically zero. Wow. I mean, if you're a tourist, you're constantly supervised by government guides. It's like having your own personal, state-sanctioned chaperone at all times. You'd probably have a hard time even finding trouble if you wanted to.
Exactly. It's the safest place in the world if you consider being under constant surveillance safe. You're not going to get mugged because everyone is too busy following the rules or they just vanish. Whoa. The crime rates are low because what we consider crime might just be considered disloyalty there, and the consequences for that are, shall we say, incredibly persuasive. Ouch. You're usually okay because you're seen as a foreign currency dispenser, but you certainly won't be blending in. Aha. You stick to the itinerary.
You know, it's fascinating how the definition of safety shifts. In Mexico, you have the freedom to move, to explore, but you need to be street smart. In North Korea, there's a kind of guaranteed physical safety for visitors, but at the cost of every other kind of freedom. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. What's more important to them when they travel absolute freedom with some risks, or controlled safety with no risks but no freedom? Let us know in the comments on YouTube.
I imagine our YouTube comments section for North Korea would be quite sparse. It's not exactly a hotbed for independent travel vlogging. But honestly, when we talk about safety, it's not just about what might happen to you, but what you're allowed to do. In Mexico, you can complain about the taxi fare. You can haggle for a blanket. You can probably even accidentally insult someone's cooking without a re-education camp. In North Korea, you blink wrong, and it might be a political statement.
You're being dramatic, Leo. But you do have a point about the underlying philosophies. Mexico's safety issues are often related to economic disparity and organized crime, which are problems many countries face, unfortunately. They're actively working on it, especially in tourist areas to protect their economy. They want you to come and enjoy their beautiful beaches and incredible history.
And North Korea's safety is maintained by a system that prioritizes state control above all else. So, if you're packing your bags for a trip, Mexico asks you to bring your street smarts and a good attitude. North Korea asks you to bring your passport and a blank slate for your thoughts.
Alright, so talking about countries, let's dive into political stability and social harmony. And today we're comparing Mexico and North Korea. Wow, Mexico first, it's got such a lively political scene, doesn't it? Elections are a full-blown fiesta sometimes. You see debates, rallies, people really getting into it. It's like everyone's got an opinion, and they're not shy about sharing it. That kind of energy, where people can actually voice what they think, always makes me feel so alive.
Fiesta is one way to put it. I'd say it's more like a dramatic telenovela with real-world stakes. You're right. Everyone has an opinion they're backed by, shall we say, different kinds of influences. Whoa. Mexico's democracy is certainly vibrant, but it's also got its fair share of intricate plots and shadowy characters, especially when it comes to issues like cartel influence and corruption. It's like, you think you understand the plot, then bam, new twist.
Oh, come on, Leo. You always look for the dramatic angle. Oops. While those challenges exist, speaking of social harmony, the Mexican people are incredibly warm and resilient. Wow! You see communities coming together, neighbors supporting each other, even when things get tough. It's not just about politics, it's about the everyday human connection. They have this incredible ability to find joy and unity amidst everything. It's like hands you lemons. They make the best margarita.
So I think that we can conquer that. Margaritas certainly help with social harmony. I'll give you that. Let's not gloss over the fact that a truly harmonious society isn't constantly grappling with security issues or deep economic divides. Which, you know, Mexico sometimes does. It's a complex picture. Is admirable. The challenge to have a peaceful picking of a Balamar in Simon wrestlings and in Simon Mangwa Simon sing lines or sing Simon sensing Simon sing or put say swing Simon.
Whoa! From one extreme to another. Oh! From one extreme to another. Ooh. North Korea's social harmony is, well, unique. It's a country where everything is so structured, isn't it? The official narrative is all about unity and collective spirit, with everyone working towards a common goal. It's like a meticulously choreographed dance, where every step is planned out. And from what we understand, be understands of national pride.
Meticulously choreographed is one way to describe it. I'd call it more of a forced ballet where the audience is also the cast, and everyone's holding their breath. When you talk about political stability in North Korea, it's less about dynamic debates and more about absolute control. Well, social harmony there isn't something that organically blossoms, it's carefully, shall we say, enforced. It's the kind of harmony you get when there's only one song allowed on the radio, played on a loop. All the time.
Oh, Leo, you're making it sound like a dystopian Ellen show. But truly, the lack of outside information in the tightly controlled media has certainly shaped the internal social harmony. People grow up knowing only one narrative, and that creates a very different kind of social fabric compared to, say, Mexico. It's a system that prioritizes collective identity above individual expression. It's a very stark contrast when you think about it.
Indeed. And while Mexico's challenges sometimes spill onto the streets, in North Korea, everything is kept incredibly neat. Well, you don't see public dissent, you see parades. You don't see varied opinions, you see unwavering loyalty. It's a different kind of stability, certainly. It makes you wonder how much goes on beneath the surface. For anyone trying to understand the deeper layers of such societies, tools that help you sift through vast amounts of information are crucial. That's why we always recommend checking out Guadalajara.
I know mariachi. Bands or wrestling matches there, I imagine. But it just highlights how political stability can mean completely different things. In Mexico, it's about navigating a vibrant, sometimes turbulent democracy, with social harmony stemming from community bonds. In North Korea, it's about stability through absolute control and a singular, enforced social narrative. Well, both are stable in their own ways, but one definitely has more room for spontaneous dance parties.
And one has significantly more room for impromptu coffee breaks. Which, speaking from experience, is pretty crucial for overall social harmony.
Well, since we were just discussing the different types of travel, let's look at the economic conditions and cost of living in Mexico and North Korea. When I think about Mexico, my mind immediately goes to those bustling markets, the vibrant street food, and just feeling like your money actually stretches. It's like a happy little jingle in your wallet.
Yeah, Mira. Your wallet probably sings mariachi music there. But honestly, comparing the economic conditions of Mexico and, North Korea, it's like trying to compare a 5-star buffet to a very exclusive, very quiet picnic where you're not entirely sure what's on the menu. You can't even get past the front gate without an invitation from, let's just say, a very particular host.
Oops. You're right, Leo. It's quite the contrast. But let's start with Mexico. It has a really dynamic economy, doesn't it? Lots of manufacturing, a booming tourism industry, and a good flow of remittances. For anyone thinking of moving there, especially our listeners on Jet of AI, you'd find a pretty accessible job market in cities like Mexico City or Guadalajara, particularly in tech or hospitality. And the cost of living can be incredibly attractive if you're earning in.
Accessible job, but ain't we can top of that. Accessible job market for some. If you're planning to sell artisanal organic kale smoothies, maybe. But joking aside, you're right. Mexico offers a real market economy. Now, try finding the cost of living index for North Korea. My internet search just politely suggested I reevaluate my life choices. Seriously, it's a completely state-controlled system. There isn't a market in the sense we understand it. And almost entity is centrally planned.
It certainly puts things into perspective, doesn't it? For foreign visitors or diplomats in North Korea, their financial realities are almost entirely dictated by the state, not by a fluctuating market. You're not exactly popping into a local grocery store to compare avocado prices. It's more about state-provided necessities, which makes a traditional cost of living comparison almost impossible. But for those curious, I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me that while prices can vary, it's generally a very.
Avocado prices. You'd probably be more concerned about simply finding an avocado, or a state-approved avocado maybe. In North Korea, The concept of job opportunities for the average expat or foreigner is, well, let's just say it's not on LinkedIn. Oops. It's an economy designed for isolation and self-sufficiency, not for foreign investors looking to open a chain of boutique coffee shops. Unless those coffee shops are for, very specific.
Well, that's definitely a clear distinction. So, while Mexico offers a vibrant, albeit diverse, economy with a very manageable cost of living for many, North Korea is in a category all its own, making traditional economic comparisons almost irrelevant for non-cities. Aha! It really highlights how important it is to research beyond just the surface, and why sites like Jetofei are so helpful for understanding these stark differences.
Exactly. One offers you a choice of tacos for every budget. The other offers, well, a very limited choice of almost everything. So if you're trying to figure out where your dollars will stretch further, or even just where your dollars will actually be used for transactions, Mexico is clearly the more conventional option. And if you like this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube because we're just getting started.
Alright, so we just filled everyone's ears with tales of delicious food from Mexico and, well, unique dining experiences from North Korea. But once your belly is full, the big question is, where do you lay your head? Let's look at accommodation options and quality. Leo, where would you start?
I'd start by saying that for housing, these two countries exist on entirely different planets. Wow, one offers you a kaleidoscope of choices, while the other offers the choice.
You always have a way of putting things, Leo. In Mexico, you really are spoiled for choice. Oh, from beachfront luxury resorts where you feel like royalty, to quirky Airbnbs in colonial towns, or even just a cozy apartment in Mexico City. I saw one listing for a refurbished hacienda, complete with its own avocado orchard. Imagine the morning toast.
And I imagine the property taxes on that avocado orchard, Mira. While Mexico does offer that amazing variety from sprawling villas to modest apartments, the quality can be a spectrum. Wow! You can get 5-star pampering or a place where the shower decides if it wants to be cold or colder. Oops. Finding a genuinely good landlord or understanding the local rental market can definitely be an adventure for expats. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me.
Speaking of unique adventures, let's pivot to North Korea. Now, when we talk about accommodation options there, it's more about state-approved experience zones, wouldn't you say? For foreign visitors, you're primarily staying in designated hotels like the Yangji Kedu International Hotel in Pyongyang. It's got a bowling alley and a casino. Well, who needs an avocado orchard when you have a bowling alley, right?
Aha! Mira, the bowling alley might be there, but I suspect the options on the menu are heavily curated, just like everything else. You won't be browsing for charming seaside cottages or rustic mountain cabins on Jetofei in North Korea. There's no private housing market, no rental data to pore over. It's a completely different concept of quality, where the state provides and you as a foreigner accept. Ouch. It's less about living and more about being accommodated.
Leo, you make it sound like choosing a flavor of ice cream versus choosing between a rock and a harder rock. But honestly, for those who do go, the hotels are generally clean and functional by local standards. It's a very particular kind of stay. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. If you had to pick, would you prefer endless housing choices with occasional quirks, or a very limited, controlled, but consistent option?
Consistency is certainly a word for it, Mira. Consistency is certainly a word for it, Mira. One country allows you to live out your architectural dreams, perhaps even a pyramid-shaped house. Whoa! The other offers you a bed in a building where you might not even know what the next-door neighbor is doing, if there even is a next-door neighbor you can interact with. For real estate investors, I definitely recommend checking out Mexico. You'll find a lot more market to research there. And if you enjoyed this stark comparison,
Okay, so speaking of adventures, you know how sometimes the biggest adventure is just getting into a country? Let's talk about visa, immigration, and official procedures. And for this one, we're pitting Mexico against. And she pauses for dramatic effect. North Korea.
whoa, Mira, you really know how to set up a comedic challenge, don't you? That's like comparing a casual stroll in the park to trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, underwater during a lightning storm. Ouch.
Exactly. But let's start with Mexico. Many of our listeners might have dreamt of those beautiful beaches and vibrant culture. Getting in as a tourist is often quite straightforward for a lot of nationalities, right? You get your tourist card on arrival, sometimes a visa-free entry.
Ah, the simple life. Just fill out a form, show your passport, and boom, you're in. Unless, of course, you're me, and you've accidentally packed a suitcase full of questionable souvenirs. Oops. Then it's less boom and more hum. Sir, what exactly is this tiny sombrero filled with glitter? But generally, Mexico wants you there. Make it relatively easy.
I really do. And for longer stays like a temporary residency visa or a work permit, it's certainly more involved. But it's a clear process. You gather documents, apply at a consulate in your home country, and then finalize things when you arrive. It requires patience, maybe a good lawyer, but it's totally manageable. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me here. It's a system that works, even if it has its bureaucratic quirks.
Bureaucratic quirks, Mira? That's a generous way of saying you'll spend half your life in a waiting room contemplating the meaning of fluorescent lighting. Oh, I'm just picturing the amount of coffee I need to survive those lines. But you're right. It's a known path. It's not a mystery. You eventually get an answer. It's a bit like learning to dance the salsa. You'll stumble a lot, but you'll get there eventually.
And imagine doing that dance in North Korea. Whoa, this is where our comparison gets interesting. Because for North Korea, it's not about ease. It's about a very controlled, very specific process that feels more like an audition for a secret spy movie than a vacation plan.
An audition? More like a don't make eye contact, don't breathe too loud kind of experience. You don't just get a visa to North Korea like you're ordering a pizza. You typically have to go through a very select tour operator, and even then your itinerary is highly curated. No wandering off to find some quirky street art, Mira. No accidental loops, I walked into a forbidden zone moments. Ouch. It's like applying for a job where the job description is just be a good guest and don't think too hard.
Yes, and for immigration, forget about it for the average person. It's not really an option. It's definitely not a place for digital nomads looking to set up shop and just work from anywhere. The official procedures are so tightly managed, you're essentially on a guided journey from the moment you arrive until you leave. It's not designed for independent exploration or long-term settlement. It's fascinating how stark the contrast is, isn't it?
Fascinating indeed. One country rolls out the welcome mat, albeit a slightly dusty one. And the other rolls out, well, a highly monitored red carpet that leads directly to your hotel room. Oh. I mean, you can't just rock up to the border with a backpack and a cheerful hola and expect to walk in. You'd probably get a very stern look and a suggestion to consult the nearest travel advisory. I actually wonder what our listeners think about this. Have any of you attempted to navigate these waters?
I'm sure there are some incredible stories out there. So, when it comes to practical tips for Mexico, it's about being organized, having all your documents, and maybe practicing your Spanish phrases for official forms. For North Korea, well, the tip is to find a reputable tour group and follow every single instruction. There's no improvising your way through that one, is there?
No improvisation. My entire life philosophy would shatter. Ouch! Imagine trying to crack a joke in a North Korean immigration office. I'd probably just get a blank stare and then be politely, but firmly escorted to the next available plane. So, if you're planning your next big move, and you're thinking which country offers a smoother bureaucratic journey, and you're considering these two, I think the answer is pretty clear, even for my coffee-addled brain. And for those looking for reliable information on this.
Absolutely, Jet Fei I is there to help simplify these big decisions. And for those who are enjoying this deep dive into travel bureaucracy, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Because seriously, when it comes to getting through official procedures, Mexico says bienvenido. And North Korea says, did you bring your approved itinerary? And North Korea says, did you bring your approved itinerary? And your thoughts are in line, right? Access to and quality of health services, that's our next stop. And what a topic it is. After all that talk about landscapes, our bodies need to be in tip-top shape to enjoy them.
Indeed, Mira. Because nothing says vacation bliss like a surprise medical bill, right? Or trying to explain your symptoms in charades. We're looking at Mexico and North Korea today, which is quite the spectrum for healthcare, I must say. One's known for medical tourism, and the other is known for not letting many people in.
Wow, you've really set the stage for quite the contrast, Leo. So, starting with Mexico is a nation for medical tourism, isn't it? People travel there for quality procedures at potentially lower cost than back home. It's like finding a hidden gem that also happens to have highly skilled doctors. Ooh. They have public and private systems, but the private hospitals, especially in larger cities or Guadalajara, are often quite modern and deficient.
Hidden gem, Mira. I'd say it's more like a well-advertised secret, judging by the number of dental tourists I've met. But you're right, the private sector in Mexico can be top-notch, with many doctors trained in the US or Europe. If you've got the insurance or the cash, you're looking at excellent facilities, English-speaking staff, and sometimes even a beach view from your recovery room. For expats, if you're not plugged into their social security system, private insurance is pretty much your go-to.
Well, queues are just an opportunity to make new friends, Leo. But seriously, the private system in Mexico does offer a great level of care. Now, the public system, like the IMSS, is theoretically available to all citizens on legal residence. It's affordable, sometimes free, but it can be quite strained, leading to longer wait times and more basic facilities. It's a good safety net, but perhaps not for complex, immediate needs for expats.
Right? Safety net that sometimes feels like a hammock with a few holes in it. Oops. Look, it's great that it's there, but if you're expecting a private hospital experience on a public budget, you might be in for a surprise. Oh, speaking of surprises, let's pivot to North Korea. Now, this is where our expat lens gets a little foggy. Information on their healthcare system is as open as their borders.
Well, yes. North Korea presents a unique case. From what's publicly understood, their healthcare system is nominally universal and state-funded. Everyone is supposed to have access to medical care, which sounds wonderful in theory, right? Oh. It's focused on preventive medicine and integrates traditional Korean medicine alongside modern practices.
Nominally universal and integrates traditional medicine. That's a diplomatic way of saying, good luck finding a CT scan outside of Pyongyang. Sources, often from defectors or tightly controlled state media, suggest that while it's free, there are significant shortages of basic medicines of humor, or perhaps a private jet loaded with medical facilities, and even electricity in many facilities. Imagine needing Enzerke, and they tell you the machine runs on good intentions. Ouch. If you're thinking of moving there as an expat.
Uh-oh, Leo, you always find the humor in the most challenging situations. But it highlights a real concern, doesn't it? The contrast in resource availability is stark. While Mexico's private sector is thriving and welcoming, North Korea's system, despite its stated goals, faces significant practical limitations for its population. It really makes you appreciate transparency and choice, doesn't it?
Indeed, Mira. One offers you a choice of specialists, the other might offer you a choice between a grimace and a grimace. It's a stark reminder that free doesn't always mean accessible or quality. For anyone considering a long-term stay, especially an expat, the sheer availability of consistent, modern medical care in Mexico's private sector is a huge draw. Meanwhile, in North Korea, you'd likely rely on diplomatic clinics if you could even get there.
Well, regardless of where you are, knowing your options is key. And for our listeners, if you want to dive deeper into global healthcare systems or find resources for expat life, remember to check out Just or AI. They've got a wealth of information that goes beyond what we can cover in a few minutes. Wow.
Exactly. And if you think Mira and R are completely off base or have some wild healthcare stories of your own, please let us know in the comments below on YouTube. We love hearing your perspectives, especially if they involve medical adventures that somehow ended up being funny. Because honestly, who doesn't love a good story about a rogue appendix and the language barrier?
Alright, so speaking of getting around, can I just say my favorite part of any trip is trying to figure out the local transport system. It's like a giant puzzle, but instead of pieces, you get buses that look like they're having a dance party, or metros that feel like a sardine can a roller coaster. I mean, who needs a theme park when you have rush hour in a new city? Well...
Mira, only you would call in your death experience on a crowded bus a theme park. I swear, your idea of fun involves a lot more jostling and questionable odors than mine. But you're right, getting from A to B reveals so much about a place. Let's talk about that glorious chaos, shall we? You know, the kind where you just throw your hands up and say, well, I guess I'm going wherever this takes me.
And speaking of organized chaos, let's dive into Mexico's transportation. Imagine as you step out, and suddenly, you're faced with a symphony of honking taxis, vibrant PS ear-ostlers little vans that cram in as many people as possible, and a metro system that, in Mexico City, is like an underground labyrinth. Wow. It's an adventure just getting to the next taco stand. What do you all think, our listeners who've navigated those streets? Do you agree it's a beautiful, bewildering dance?
Hey dance, you say? More like a gladiatorial event, if you ask me. Especially in places like Mexico City. The metro is impressive, I'll give you that the second largest in North America, right? But the sheer volume of humanity. Whoa. I once saw a guy on a bus holding a live chicken. I'm not even kidding. My immediate thought was, is this a new kind of emotional support animal? Or is he just taking dinner home? Road quality can be surprisingly good on the major highways. But then you veer off into a smaller town.
Oh my god. A chicken. Only in Mexico. See, that's the kind of spontaneous joy I'm talking about. And you know, while some people might worry about navigating the busy streets, there are so many options. You have your regular buses, the collective ups, the collective ups for quick hubs. And then the intercity bus lines are actually quite comfortable, almost luxurious sometimes. But on wheels, without the actual flying part. Obviously. They connect everything from bustling metropolitan trip. Definitely check.
Luxurious buses are a nice touch, but let's not forget the traffic jams that can turn a 20-minute trip into an epic saga. Ouch! I bet our listeners in Mexico City relate to this traffic chaos. You're stuck, the car isn't moving, and suddenly you realize you've aged 5 years just sitting now. Still, it's a living, breathing system. Now, shifting gears from the wonderfully chaotic to the, let's just say, highly structured transportation, what about North Korea?
Well, now that's a contrast. North Korea's transportation is like stepping into a perfectly choreographed ballet, where every movement is intentional and controlled. Wow, you won't see a random chicken on a bus there, Leo. I can promise you that. Usually by praying to a bus. The famous Pyongyang metro, for example, is incredibly deep, like a subterranean art gallery, complete with chandeliers and murals. Oh, it's more of an experience, a showcase, than just a way to get to work.
Oh, art gallery on rails. I like that. I'm just picturing myself trying to crack a joke on that metro and getting glared at. Oops, you're right. The contrast is stark. While Mexico's roads can feel like a free-for-all in North Korea, roads outside of Pyongyang are largely deserted, even the main ones. Why? Because very few people own cars. Why? Because very few people own cars. It's almost all state-owned or military vehicles. So, if you're thinking of a road trip across the country, you might be driving on some very empty, very quiet roads.
Oh, I highly doubt the roadside cafes, Leo. It's a completely different world. You'll see trams and trolley buses in Pyongyang, which adds to that classic, almost vintage feel. But for foreigners, personal freedom of movement is practically non-existent. You're always with your guides, and intercity travel is severely restricted and always chaperoned. It's not about convenience or freedom of choice, it's about control. Do you guys, our YouTube audience, think you could handle such a structured travel experience?
I mean, I appreciate efficiency, but chaperoned and severely restricted usually don't appear in my travel brochure. Ouch! It really highlights how crucial a country's internal policies are to everyday mobility. In Mexico, you have the option of a million different ways to get around, from collectivos to ride-share apps, whereas in North Korea, it's essentially you go where the state wants you to go. It's less about infrastructure supporting seamless movement for the populace and more about...
You've nailed it. So, while Mexico offers a vibrant, sometimes wild, transportation experience that's all about individual choice and a dash of chaos, North Korea presents a highly organized, state-controlled system where freedom of movement is a luxury most don't have. Wow, two extremes but both fascinating in their own way. And if you've got a better transit hack for either country, or just want to tell us about your craziest bus ride, drop a comment below on YouTube. We love hearing your stories. Let's look at the language barrier and ease of communication in Mexico and North Korea. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm already speaking a universal language of laughter, but then I try to order tacos in Mexico and suddenly my universal language turns into pointing and desperate hand gestures. But seriously, Mexico is mostly Spanish, right? I heard they also have tons of indigenous languages, which sounds like an amazing cultural mosaic. But wow, my brain just exploded thinking about learning all of them.
Mira, your universal language of laughter probably just confuses a poor taco vendor. Oops. You're right. In Mexico, it's overwhelmingly Spanish. And yes, while there are many beautiful indigenous languages, if you're not planning a deep dive into ancient Aztec poetry, Spanish is your go-to. I've seen tourists trying to order, and it's like a charades game with salsa. But people are generally quite patient, which is a blessing. Try that in, say, a Berlin bureaucracy office.
Wow, so true. That patience is key. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me here. Even if you butcher the pronunciation, they'll usually meet you halfway. Oh, I once tried to say quesadilla, and it came out sounding like Cristo Doodle. But they still knew what I meant. It's like they appreciate the effort, right? And in tourist spots, I hear English is pretty common. So, you don't have to become a fluent Spanish speaker just to enjoy a beach vacation.
Quiso doodle. I might have to steal that for my next stand-up. Yes. In places like Cancun or Mexico City's tourist zones, you can absolutely get by with English. It's almost like they built a little English-speaking bubble for visitors. But step outside that bubble, and suddenly your hola needs some backup. Whoa, I've observed people venturing into local markets, and it's a symphony of pointing, nodding, and frantic translation app usage.
An adventure indeed. And for expats, I think learning Spanish is almost like a warm hug from the culture, you know? It makes you feel so much more connected. Oh, they have a lot of language schools there, which is fantastic. But okay, since we're talking about ease of communication, let's just glide over to North Korea for a moment. This one's, a bit different, isn't it? I mean, I don't imagine many Quiso Doodle moments happening there.
No, I highly doubt Quiso Doodle is on the menu, or any spontaneous, unscripted communication for that matter. Whoa. North Korea is, shall we say, a masterclass in controlled dialogue. The primary language is Korean, specifically the Pyongyang dialect. And for foreigners, communication is less about ease and more about permission. You're typically with an assigned guide, and every interaction with a local is filtered, if it even happens at all.
Wow. So no casual chat with a local about the weather or asking for directions to the nearest coffee shop. That sounds incredibly isolating. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, because for me, that would be a huge challenge. Even if you did manage to learn Korean, the social norms and the strict environment must make it incredibly hard to actually use it freely.
Exactly, Mira. It's less about your linguistic ability and more about the environment's inherent barriers. I can just picture you trying to strike up a conversation with a local in Pyongyang. Hello, my friend, what are you doing today? And they'd probably look at their guide, then back at you, then slowly back away, and back at you, then slowly back away. It's not about their willingness, it's about the system. There's no ease of communication when every word is potentially scrutinized. Ouch.
Oh, I'd probably still try, just to see what happens. Oops. But then I'd realize, okay, maybe not the best place for my spontaneous dance routine. So, for expats, it's almost impossible to integrate linguistically then. I mean, who would even teach you? I suppose you're there for a very specific, controlled purpose if you're there at all.
Precisely. If you're an expat in North Korea, you're likely a diplomat or working in a highly specialized, isolated sector. Your communication is largely confined to a federal foreign residence. Wow. Learning the local language for everyday use with citizens is not really an option. It's designed that way. There's no free flow of information, let alone casual banter about the price of tomatoes.
Oh, that's a whole other level of communication barrier. It's not just the language, it's the entire system. So in Mexico, you can stumble through Spanish, wave your hands, use an app, and probably end up with a delicious meal and a new friend. Oh, in North Korea, it sounds like even a simple hello is an act of diplomatic negotiation. Whoa.
You hit the nail on the head. Mexico offers a vibrant, if sometimes challenging, linguistic landscape where effort is rewarded. North Korea presents an almost impenetrable barrier, not just of language, but of control. It's the difference between a spontaneous street party and a highly choreographed parade.
A spontaneous street party versus a highly choreographed parade. That's the perfect way to put it. Oh, I'm pretty sure my Quiso Doodle would thrive in the street party, but probably cause an international incident at the parade. What do you guys think? Which linguistic adventure would you prefer? Let us know in the comments on YouTube. And speaking of comments, make sure to check out Jet Off AI for more insights into global travel.
Ah, indeed, Mira. One is a welcoming linguistic hug, the other a tightly closed linguistic vault. I think I'd still pack my translation app for both, just in case. But one would be for fun, the other for sheer survival.
Alright, Leo, speaking of cultural mosaic, let's dive into cultural diversity and tolerance. We're going from the vibrant streets of Mexico to, well, a place that might define monochromatic a little differently. Mexico is like a giant, colorful mural, isn't it?
Mural that's sometimes still being painted, and occasionally the paint splatters where you don't expect it. But you're right, Mira. Mexico's cultural diversity is immense. You've got indigenous roots stretching back thousands of years, the Maya, the Aztec Zapotec, then the Spanish influence, and now a pretty significant modern-day American expat community and folks from all over Latin America.
It truly is. I mean, think about the music alone: mariachi, cumbia, salsa. Oh, and the food: tacos, tamales, mole. Uh-huh. Each region has its own twist, right? It's like a culinary adventure waiting to happen. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me. You can eat something new every day for a year.
Or just the same taco, but with a different salsa and call it new. But on the tolerance front, Mexico, while generally warm and welcoming, still grapples with some deep-seated issues. There's a sort of, shall we say, social class by skin tone history that can create subtle or not-so-subtle prejudices. Oops. We saw some of that when we were researching this topic, courtesy of Jet Off AI.
True, yeah, no country is perfect. But when you look at how different communities coexist, how traditions from indigenous groups are celebrated alongside modern ones, like the Day of the Dead becoming a global phenomenon. Wow, it's a testament to their capacity for embracing differences. I mean, compare that to some places where diversity is just the different types of gray on the walls.
You're clearly hinting at our next country, aren't you? North Korea. Now, if Mexico is a vibrant mural, North Korea. North Korea is, well, a very precisely drawn, monochrome blueprint. Their official ideology, Juche, emphasizes a pure, self-reliant Korean race. So, cultural diversity isn't exactly high on the agenda. It's almost non-existent.
I suppose tolerating North Korea means tolerating only what the state tells you to tolerate, right? Ouch. It's less about embracing differences and more about ensuring everyone adheres to one very specific script. I actually wonder what our listeners think about that kind of controlled environment. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments on YouTube.
Yeah. I imagine the comments section for North Korea might be a bit sparse, Mira. But you're spot on. Social harmony there is, shall we say, enforced. It's not about individuals from different backgrounds coming together organically, it's about everyone being uniformly loyal to the leadership. Any deviation from that, not so much tolerance, more like a re-education camp. Whoa!
Well, that sounds like a very intense way to achieve social cohesion. In Mexico, even with its challenges, you see people from all walks of life interacting in markets, plazas, and festivals. There's a genuine, albeit sometimes messy, social fabric. In North Korea, the fabric seems to be woven from identical threads by a very strict tailor. Oops.
A tailor with a very long list of rules, and a needle that looks suspiciously like a missile. It's funny how a country can literally isolate itself to preserve a perceived cultural purity. They don't want foreign ideas, foreign entertainment. They even regulate hairstyles. Can you imagine? My hair's already a disaster. I'd be in trouble immediately.
Well, no adventurous street food tasting there then, Leo. My raw octopus soup story would definitely not go down well. But seriously, the contrast is stark. Mexico's diversity is a result of centuries of mixing, migration, and adaptation. It's a living, breathing, evolving culture. North Korea's is a deliberate suppression to maintain a rigid, unchanging identity. It's like comparing Age's concert to a military parade.
Age's concert where everyone's playing the same note for decades. I'm pretty sure my stand-up routine about daily absurdities would land me in hot water there. Sir, your joke about traffic implies deviation from the collective path. Ouch. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, people would just laugh and offer me another taco. So if you're looking for genuine cultural diversity in a place where you can be yourself, even if you accidentally spill coffee on your shirt, I think the choice is clear.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying this comparison, don't forget to like this video on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more fascinating, and sometimes, frankly, unbelievable contrasts like this one.
Yeah, Mira's right. Because who knows, next time we might compare him. A country where everyone sings karaoke all the time to a country where singing is strictly forbidden.
Alright, so since we were just pondering about which places truly open their arms to different experiences, let's delve into a fascinating topic: educational opportunities on language schools. Now, thinking about Mexico, it's practically a global hub for Spanish language immersion, isn't it? You go there. And suddenly, everyone's speaking like a telenovela star. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who have studied there think about this.
Telenovela star, that's quite the aspiration, Mira. Personally, I'm just aiming for coherent human being most mornings. But yes, Mexico's appeal for language learning is pretty clear. What with their vibrant culture and, actual Spanish speakers. Wow. It's not like you're learning it from a dusty old textbook in a dimly lit room with only a state-approved squirrel for company.
Babes, Leo, you always have a way of, shall we, painting a picture that's vivid. But truly, Mexico's public universities and private institutions, especially in larger cities like Mexico City or Guadalajara, offer a decent range of educational programs. They're pretty accessible too, which is a big plus for international students looking for quality without emptying their entire piggy bank.
Yes, accessible is a word that rarely comes to mind when one considers the other half of our comparison today. Now, let's pivot gently, or maybe not so gently, to North Korea. When we talk about educational opportunities there, it's less about choosing your major and more about mastering the fine art of synchronized flag waving. Wooden-use schools, as we typically understand them, are a rather unique concept in a place where independent thought might not be on the curriculum.
Well, you're really going for the dramatic interpretation, Leo. But you're right, it's a very different system. While foreign language education exists in North Korea, it's heavily focused on specific objectives, mostly for those working in tourism or government to interact with the outside world. It's less about, say, finding your inner artist of a creative writing workshop and more about very specific state-approved narratives. For our listeners wondering how deep this goes, you can probably find some related articles on Jet Orfe that might shed more light on these very disdain.
State-approved narratives is certainly one way to put it. I imagine their equivalent of student testimonials would be something along the lines of, "I was educated, and I loved it, exactly as instructed." In Mexico, if a student says their experience was vibrant, they actually experience vibrance. In North Korea, vibrant probably means the colors on the propaganda posters were particularly bright that day. The contrast is almost a punchline in itself.
For all your sarcasm, Leo, It does highlight a crucial point: the freedom to pursue knowledge. Well, in Mexico, you can actually choose what you want to learn, from ancient history to modern tech, and even pick up some local slang from street vendors. Oh, you can enroll in language schools that focus on conversational Spanish or even indigenous languages, which is incredible. Oh, I'm certain that our listeners looking for an open learning environment would definitely see the appeal.
I agree. The range in Mexico is pretty impressive. If you want to study, say, the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies, you can probably find a program. In North Korea, you'd likely be studying the migratory patterns of approved foreign visitors under supervision. And if you want to learn Korean, I suppose you could try, but the immersive experience might involve a lot of listening and not a lot of speaking.
Oops, you're imagining entire scenarios now. But it's true. Language acquisition in Mexico is driven by an actual desire for cultural exchange and communication. You meet people, you practice, you make mistakes, and then you laugh about them over tacos. In North Korea, any foreign language learning, particularly for locals, would be for very practical, strategic reasons, not for casual chit-chat at a market. It's a fundamental difference in philosophy, really.
Tacos or tactical language acquisition? That's the real choice, isn't it? And let's not forget the internet access part of education. In Mexico, you can look up anything, share notes online, even stream lectures from another country. In North Korea, your internet access is probably limited to the state-approved internet, where the only educational opportunity is perfecting your loyalty to the regime. Ouch! If you guys think that's wrong, please let us know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure I'm on solid ground with that ops wrong.
You're incorrigible, Leo. But this brings us back to the idea of educational opportunities. In Mexico, those opportunities are genuinely diverse, catering to various interests and levels, including a strong focus on higher education and vocational training. Wow! They're trying to integrate innovation and prepare students for a globalized world.
While the other side is perhaps preparing them for a very, very localized world. So in essence, if you're looking for a place where education is about personal growth and freedom of thought, Mexico might be your jam. If you prefer a curriculum steeped in unwavering ideological conformity and controlled information, well, you know where to look. It's all about what you define as opportunity, right? This entire discussion makes me want to grab a coffee. And I think Getafe probably has some amazing travel deals to places where you probably...
Moving on from all our talk about shopping and saving, let's talk about something that truly dictates how you live and what you wear: climate and seasonal conditions. I always imagine Mexico as just one big sunny beach, but then I look at a map and think, oops, it's so much more. It's like a whole wardrobe of weather patterns in one country. You have the coastal areas where you're perpetually in shorts, then the central highlands where you might actually need a light jacket. It's truly amazing.
Oops, it's so much more is right. I once tried to pack for a beach and ancient ruins trip to Mexico, and my suitcase looked like it was preparing for a world tour. I had flip-flops on one side and thermal socks on the other. Whoa, it's not just a big, sunny beach, Mira. It's a vast land of extremes. You get that scorching, humid tropical heat along the coasts, perfect for dissolving all your worries into sweat. And then you have the northern deserts, where the sun, it judges you for being unprepared.
Yeah, you always make it sound like an epic battle against the elements. But imagine the sheer variety. Ooh. One day, you're sipping a cool drink by the Caribbean, dodging sudden but warm downpours during hurricane season. Which, by the way, is a whole nother kind of adventure. And the next, you're enjoying temperate, almost spring-like weather in Mexico City. Wow! It's like the country can't decide what mood it's in. And I kind of love that. It keeps things exciting.
Exciting, yes. Or just a massive laundry challenge. And speaking of challenges, let's pivot sharply from Mexico's wardrobe of weather to North Korea's. Now. Now that's a country where the climate isn't just a factor, it's practically a character in a drama. Unlike Mexico's anything-goes approach, North Korea boasts a more traditional, for distinct seasons kind of climate. You won't find any tropical beach escapes there, unless you bring your own some pit in a very large heater.
Oh, but for distinct seasons can be beautiful, Leo. Imagine crisp, snowy winters that look straight out of a postcard, where everything is hushed and white. And then the vibrant springs, full of cherry blossoms. I'm picturing it already in warm, green summers, followed by colorful autumns. Wow, it sounds quite picturesque, even if the daily life might not be as picturesque as the scenery.
Picturesque indeed, if you enjoy dressing like a human onion for half the year. Here they're famously cold and dry, are no joke. Mira than a light jacket there you need layers, then more layers. Then more than a light jacket there you need layers. Then maybe a blanket. Ouch. And the summers. Oh hot. Bring along monsoon rains, which can be pretty relentless. So, it's either freezing or soaking with brief, pleasant breathers in between. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who live in places with such extreme winters manage to do for fun.
I'm sure they find a way to make it fun, Leo. Perhaps they have epic snowball fights or invent new indoor sports. Oh, it's all about adaptation, isn't it? In Mexico, you adapt to the occasional downpour or the intense midday sun. In North Korea, the rhythm of life, farming, and even daily routines are heavily influenced by these clear, strong seasonal shifts. It means they probably have a profound appreciation for spring and autumn, brief respite.
Profound appreciation for not freezing or drowning, I'd say. The extreme swings certainly shape local adaptations, from architecture designed to handle heavy snow to agricultural practices that rely on those monsoon rains. It's a land where the weather truly dictates terms rather than just offering variety for a tourist's packing list. If you're planning a trip, Jedafea could probably help you figure out the exact week to go to avoid frostbite or flash floods.
You always find a silver lining in the absurd, Leo. But it's true, understanding a country's climate isn't just about what clothes to pack. It's about how people live, how they build, how they celebrate, and even what they eat. Wow, whether it's the fiery sun of a Mexican desert or the biting wind of a North Korean winter, these climates shape resilience and culture in incredible ways.
Exactly. So next time you're complaining about a little drizzle, just remember there are folks out there wrestling with monsoons or building snow fortresses for survival. Haha, it certainly puts things in perspective.
Well, since we were just discussing places, let's look at this topic: food, culture, and nutritional alternatives. Oh, I'm already getting hungry just thinking about all the incredible flavors in Mexico. Well, you know, Leo, if I had to pick one country to eat my way through, Mexico would be near the top. Their cuisine is like a giant.
I agree, Mira. Mexico is certainly a feast for the senses, though I'm usually wary of anything that tries to hug me with spice. I remember seeing a street vendor once, making tacos so fast his hands were a blur. I thought, is he a chef or a magician? You've got your corn tortillas, your beans, chili peppers in every shade you can imagine. Oh, it's vibrant. It's vibrant. It's fire. It's everything you want from food.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the tacos, though. I could eat tacos every day and be happy. Wow! Have you ever tried mole? It's like chocolate and chili had a beautiful, delicious baby. Whoa, or a proper pozole. It's not just food, it's a story on a plate. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me. Tell us in the comments if you prefer your tacos al pastor or carnitas.
My stomach just did a dramatic telenovela sigh. Who? Speaking of intense flavors and rich histories, let's pivot to a place where nutritional alternatives take on a very different meaning: North Korea. While Mexico offers a smorgasbord in North Korea, it's more about what's available today.
Well, yes. It's a very unique situation. Their traditional dishes like cold noodles, naeng mayen, or BBM are definitely part of their heritage. But for the average person, I imagine the focus isn't on a culinary adventure, but more on basic sustenance. It's like, is it food? Great. Is it food? Great. I remember reading about how they rely heavily on rice and corn. And of course, kimchi is a staple.
Is it food? Great! You've got a point, Mira. It's a stark contrast to Mexico's vibrant markets bursting with fresh produce. In North Korea, nutritional alternatives often mean finding wild greens or making do with what the state provides. Whoa! It's not about choosing between different types of avocado, but maybe whether you have any at all. Ouch! I can just picture myself there asking, "Excuse me, do you have gluten-free kimchi?" And getting a very blank stare.
Oh, Leo, you'd be a riot in any situation. But truly, it shifts the perspective. In Mexico, you have choices, you have abundance, you have street food vendors selling deliciousness at every corner. Ooh, you can easily find vegetarian options with beans and vegetables.
Right. While in North Korea, the festival is often about making sure everyone gets a basic portion. Reports talk about how the elite might have access to more varied meals in specialized restaurants, but for most citizens, dietary diversity isn't really a thing. It's less about innovative food solutions and more about finding enough food to survive the day. Ouch! It makes you appreciate how many options we have, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Wow. It really highlights how culture and politics shape our plates. From the fiery passion in Mexican cuisine, where every meal is a celebration, to the disciplined practicality of the North Korean diet, where efficiency and survival are key. It's a powerful reminder of how fortunate many of us are to simply choose what we eat.
Indeed. And if you're ever curious about the nitty-gritty details of global cultures, remember to check out Jet Off AI for more insights. They've got information that might just surprise you. For now, though, I think I need to go find a taco. All this talk of food is making my stomach protest loudly.
You know, it's fascinating to really dig into a country's soul, isn't it? After talking about well-being and relaxation, I can't think of anything more relaxing than immersing yourself in vibrant history and art. Our next topic, historical, cultural, and artistic values, is a big one. Especially when we're looking at two places as distinct as Mexico and North Korea. Oh.
Distinct is one way to put it. It's like comparing a mariachi band to a very, very quiet library. Mexico, for example, practically screams its history at you from every street corner. Wow. You've got the echoes of ancient civilizations, the Mayans, the Aztecs with their pyramids and intricate art, just baked right into the landscape. Then the Spanish came, and it's this incredible fusion.
Absolutely. And it's not just ancient history, right? You walk through Mexico City and you see murals by Diego Rivera. Frida Kahlo's unmistakable influence everywhere. Wow. It's art that tells a story, art that's alive. Even their Day of the Dead celebrations are a vibrant, artistic expression of remembering ancestors. It's a culture that truly celebrates life, even in death, with colors and music. I mean, who wouldn't want to dance with a skeleton?
Wow, I've got enough skeletons in my closet without needing to dance with new ones. But you're right. Mexico's cultural tapestry as well. It's a tapestry. You can actually see the threads. Now, on the other side of the planet, in North Korea, their historical and artistic values are also deeply ingrained, but in a very controlled way. Instead of murals, you might see massive statues and monuments dedicated to leadership and the Juche ideology. Wow. It's a different kind of artistic expression. Let's say.
Singular is certainly one word for it. I once saw a documentary about their art, and it was stunning, technically, but it felt like every brushstroke was approved by a committee. No spontaneous oops. I painted an alien awkward moments there, I imagine. Ooh. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who might be art historians think about this contrast. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to let us know in the comments if you think art needs to be free to truly be art.
Free or not, it definitely serves a purpose. North Korea's art and culture heavily emphasize national pride, military strength, and the collective spirit. Wow! You see these huge, synchronized performances that are breathtaking in their scale and precision. But they're not about individual expression, are they? It's more about projecting a unified front to the world, and internally, it reinforces the state narrative.
And that's the key difference, isn't it? In Mexico, the art is often born from the people, from their joy and struggles, their indigenous roots, their celebrations. It feels like it's bubbling up from centuries of tradition, not handed down from a central committee. Oh, it's about expression, not handed down from a central committee. Oh, it's about expression, not instruction. I mean, just off AI, who really understand the value of a deep dive into diverse cultures, would certainly choose where the magic truly happens.
Spontaneity or precision both have their own impact, I suppose. But Mexico's artistic legacy is clearly global, from its vibrant textiles to its incredible culinary arts, which are an art form in themselves. You know, that's something that often gets overlooked. Food is art. And their traditions, like wrestling and lucha libre, are a cultural spectacle. It's theatrical, athletic, and has a deep cultural history. Wow! I'm certain that our listeners in Mexico would agree that you haven't truly experienced.
Oh, don't even get me started on the food earlier. My stomach is rumbling just thinking about it. But thinking about North Korea's cultural output, beyond the grand parades and monuments, there's also traditional Korean folk art, music, and dance that still exists, albeit within certain boundaries. It's like a quiet undercurrent beneath the very visible state narrative. You still have elements of traditional clothing, architecture, and music that reflect a deeper, older history, even if it's not always spotlighted for foreign eyes.
Exactly. So I think that we can conquer that. Exactly. So, while Mexico's cultural values are outward, colorful, boisterous, welcoming you to join the fiesta, North Korea's are inward, reinforcing a very specific identity. Wow. Both incredibly rich historically, but their artistic and cultural expressions couldn't be more different in their presentation and purpose. You know, Jeddah AI loves uncovering stories like this. And so do we. We're talking about two countries, both with deep roots, but one invites you to paint your own mural, while the other provides.
And you'll always pick the blank canvas, Leo. Speaking of vibrant cultures, let's talk about places where nature just shows off. You know, Leo, when I think of Mexico's natural beauty, I picture a kaleidoscope of landscapes. Wow, it's like nature couldn't decide what to be, so it just became everything. Oh.
Yeah. Mexico really flexes its natural muscles, doesn't it? From those turquoise Caribbean waters to the dusty deserts and even snow-clad volcanoes. But when you talk about nature showing off, what about a place where nature literally can't show off to everyone? I'm talking about North Korea, Mira. Whoa, it's like nature's secret garden, guarded by a very serious gnome.
Oops. You always find the unique angle, don't you? But seriously, Mexico has everything. Imagine swimming in a clear cenote, a natural sinkhole. A natural sinkhole? In the middle of a dense jungle? Ah! It's like swimming in a crystal cathedral. Or hiking up a volcanic peak that's literally still smoking. Well, Popocatépetl, for example. It's majestic and a little terrifying at the same time. I'm certain that our listeners who've explored these spots would agree with me.
So I think that we can talk about. Hey, smoking volcano, you say. Sounds like my morning coffee routine, a lot of heat and potential eruptions. North Korea, on the other hand, boasts its own kind of stark beauty. Think Mount Pitu, a sacred active volcano. Though you probably won't be kayaking on it or anything. It's got these sweeping, untouched landscapes, rugged mountains, and thick forests. Exclusive. Like a VIP lounge, decades worth of paperwork just to look at a tree.
You know, I've seen photos of those beautiful mountain ranges like the Pyongyang Mountains, the Diamond Mountains, in North Korea. They look absolutely breathtaking. Almost like something out of a painting. Wow, so pristine. But how do you even get close enough to appreciate them? Is there a special nature permit, or do you just have to admire them from a distance? I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about places that are so geographically stunning yet so hard to access.
You hit the nail on the head, Mira. It's less about a permit and more about a guided tour with strict itineraries ensuring you see exactly what they want you to see. So, no spontaneous lost in the wilderness moments there. Unlike Mexico, where you can literally just wander into a jungle and find ancient ruins or a hidden waterfall. Mexico gives you those unexpected discoveries, like finding a rogue taco truck in the middle of nowhere. North Korea's nature is more like a carefully curated museum exhibit.
A carefully curated museum exhibit. I love that. Mexico also has incredible biodiversity. Think about the Siancayan Biosphere Reserve, it's EU, and the SCO World Heritage Site with jaguars, monkeys, and incredible bird life. Ooh, or the monarch butterfly migration, where millions of butterflies turn forests orange. It's truly magical. It reminds you how vibrant our planet can be.
Millions of butterflies sounds like a beautiful, chaotic mess. Just like my desk. North Korea also has its share of wildlife, from Siberian eigers to reed-crowned cranes, but I'm guessing you won't be tracking them through the wilderness solo. You'll probably be tracking them through a very clean, very controlled path. It's the kind of untouched beauty that makes you wonder if anyone's actually allowed to touch it.
Well, I think for anyone looking for adventure, Mexico is that raw, get your hands dirty nature experience. Wow. From surfing on the Pacific coast to exploring the Sumidero Canyon's towering cliffs, it's just endless opportunities for armed excitement. You can find places that make you feel truly small in the vastness of nature.
And North Korea offers a different kind of awe. The awe of trying to imagine what's beyond the carefully constructed view. It certainly inspires thought of not quite the same kind of spontaneous adventure. So, if you like your nature wild and accessible, Mexico is your playground. If you prefer your nature pristine and seen through a tightly managed lens, then perhaps the DPRK calls to you. If you're trying to decide where to go based on natural beauty, you'll find more options for your travel style on Jetofea.
Well, speaking of people finding their inner peace, let's switch gears and talk about finding some external energy because our next topic is sports, activity, and adventure options. Wow. And when I think about Mexico, my first thought goes straight to the vibrant colors and the sheer joy of movement. Ugh. You've got everything from cheering crowds at a soccer match to people just dancing in the streets for no reason. It's like the whole country is a giant playground.
A giant playground, you say? I can picture that, especially with the lucha libre masks. Wow, I mean, talk about a theatrical sport. You have these masked wrestlers flying off the ropes. It's less about the wrestling and more about the performance art, don't you think? It's like a live-action comic book, but with more spandex. And then you have places like Cenote's underground caves with crystal clear water. Whoa! I'm certain that our listeners looking for something unique would be captivated by that.
Oh, absolutely. And those cenotes, they're not just for swimming, Leo. People go diving in them, exploring these incredible underwater worlds. It's like entering another dimension, full of ancient secrets and unexpected coolness. Ah, and speaking of ancient, let's not forget Mexico's incredible ruins like Chichen Itza or Teotihuacan. Hiking around those massive pyramids is an adventure in itself, making you feel tiny and historically significant all at once. Ooh.
I agree. The scale of those ruins is astonishing. But I wonder, do people hike those massive pyramids in lucha libre masks too? Just for the extra adventure points. Seriously though, Mexico offers genuine adventure. From scaling volcanoes to surfing the Pacific coast, it's all about personal choice and throwing yourself into it. Now, on the flip side of that, we have North Korea. You don't exactly picture spontaneous surfing lessons there, do you?
You're right, surfing might be a bit of a stretch in North Korea. But hey, every country has its own unique activities, right? Even if they're a little, shall we say, more organized. Though, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this, because it's certainly a different kind of adventure. For instance, they have these incredible mass games. Wow, imagine thousands of people performing synchronized gymnastics and dance. It's an art form, really, on a monumental scale.
An art form, yes, but perhaps less about individual expression and more about collective precision. It's like a human-sized spreadsheet coming to life. You don't see anyone spontaneously deciding to do a cartwheel in the middle of a mass game, do you? Oops. It reminds me of those incredibly specific instructions for assembly like, only turn the screw exactly 3.7 times. Whoa. And speaking of precision, Taekwondo is their national martial art.
It is. Taekwondo is definitely a sport that requires immense focus and discipline. Oh, and they also have, believe it or not, a ski resort. It might not be the Alps, but it's there. And for those who enjoy hiking, Mount Pitu is a significant spot too. While it's not the kind of free-roaming adventure, it still offers natural beauty and physical activity, wouldn't you say?
I'd say it offers a curated natural beauty. You can hike Mount Pitu, but I imagine you'd have a very clear path laid out for you, and perhaps a friendly guide ensuring you stick to it. No wandering off the trail to find a secret waterfall, I suppose. And a golf course, too, in Pyongyang. It's fascinating how sports, in certain contexts, become less about individual pursuit and more about national representation. It's like a carefully choreographed show.
You know, it's almost like a performance art in itself, even the sports. Oh, I mean, in Mexico, you might see a pickup game of soccer break out in a park. Totally spontaneous. While in North Korea, it's more about the grand display, showcasing the skill and unity of the people. Wow. It's two completely different philosophies of adventure. One says, go wild, explore. The other says, be precise, represent.
Indeed. If you're looking for an adventure that involves self-discovery by getting delightfully lost, Mexico's probably your pick. If you prefer your adventures with a side of highly synchronized human achievement, North Korea offers that too, in its own way. I just hope no one tries to combine those two styles. A lucha libre wrestler trying to do a synchronized backflip in a mask game might cause some issues. And please, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments which style of adventure you prefer.
That would certainly be a sight. Oh, but seriously, whether you're into the spontaneous, vibrant energy of Mexican sports and outdoor activities, or the incredibly disciplined and grand spectacles of North Korea, both countries offer a distinct lens through which to view recreation and adventure. It's all about what kind of thrill speaks to your spirit, isn't it? Let's move on to our next topic, and this one's a real night and day comparison. I mean, literally, we're talking about nightlife and entertainment venues. And what better place to start than Mexico, a country that practically invented the fiesta, wouldn't you say? Wow.
You can say that again. Mirror Mexico's nightlife isn't just a scene, it's a full-blown, glitter-drenched, maraca-shaking spectacle. You trip over a cobblestone in some colonial town, and you're practically doing the salsa before you hit the ground. It's vibrant, it's loud, it's every color of the rainbow, often all at once. From beach clubs in Cancun to mariachi bars in Guadalajara, there's always something or someone inviting you to just dance to.
Absolutely. Speaking of dancing, I once got pulled into a street dance in Oaxaca, and I swear I thought my hips were going to achieve sentience. That's true, Mexico really offers something for every mood, whether you're looking for a thumping club, a cozy cantina with live music, or just a quiet evening with some incredible street food and a bustling plaza. It's about being out, being social, and soaking in that electric atmosphere. You can find everything from high-end lounges to casual beach bonfires. Do you guys agree with us on that? I'm certain that our listeners living and mixing in Mediterranean.
And then we have North Korea, where the nightlife is less about where should we go and more about are we allowed to go anywhere. I imagine the wildest party involves an unscheduled power surge and everyone just marveling at the temporary darkness. Wow. It's less thumping club and more thumping of my heart hoping I didn't step out of line. Oops. I bet the biggest late night excitement is debating whether the streetleted actually stayed on past 9 p.m.
Oh, come on, Leo. Dare painting to stock a picture, while it's certainly not the Cancun spring break vibe, whoa. North Korea does have its own unique forms of entertainment. Think of the grand performances, the mass games, aha. They're not your typical night out, but they are definitely a spectacle, a different kind of entertainment, perhaps. One that's carefully orchestrated and steeped in national pride.
Controlled is one way to put it. Mira, I'd call it expertly managed FOMO. You don't have to worry about choosing between 20 different bars. You probably have one official cultural hall. That doubles as the evening's main event. I imagine the most spontaneous thing you can do is stand in a different part of the designated viewing area, hun. And as for pumping beats, I'm guessing it's more military marches than techno. Ouch. If you're looking for a wild night, you're better off checking out some of our virtual travel extend techno. Ouch.
You're incorrigible. But that contrast is exactly why we find this topic so fascinating. It highlights how culture and universal as entertainment. In North Korea, there are state-run theaters, opera houses, and even amusement parks, though access for tourists is highly restricted, and for locals, it's often a collective experience, not an individual choice of let's hit the townhome.
So, if you're a night owl in North Korea, you're probably either a very diligent worker or an insomniac with a vivid imagination. The nightlife might involve watching state television or attending a cultural performance that emphasizes collective discipline. I'm curious, what do our listeners who've experienced both ends of this kotek in Mexico and then experienced, well, evening tweeted in North Korea? Let us know in the comments on YouTube. We're all ears, or maybe just curious. We're all ears.
It's clear that Mexico offers a rich tapestry of spontaneous, joyful, and diverse nightlife experiences. Wow. From street parties to world-class clubs, it's an open invitation to let loose. North Korea, on the other hand, presents a highly structured, state-sanctioned approach to entertainment, where nightlife is primarily about organized cultural spectacles and collective viewing. Aha. The distinction couldn't be more pronounced. Really. Aha. Ooh. We're diving into something super important now, family-friendly environments and children's activities. And when I think about that, my mind immediately jumps to Mexico. Wow. Seriously. If you've ever seen Mexican families, it's like a warm, colorful explosion of togetherness. Kids are everywhere, part of everything, whether it's a Sunday stroll in a plaza or a lively celebration. They have these incredible public parks. You know, with bright murals and playgrounds, where children can just be children. Plus, the food. Oh, the food.
An explosion of togetherness, Mira. Mira, sounds like your average Tuesday morning at home. My observational skills tell me that while Mexico's vibrant family scene is great for spontaneous fun, our other country for comparison, North Korea, might have a slightly different approach to children's activities. Well, imagine asking a kid in Pyongyang, "So, what did you do today?" And they answer? Well, after our collective morning drill, we attended a mandatory lesson on revolutionary history, then had an organized history.
Oh, come on, Leo. You always find the most unique angles. But even in a structured environment, children need to learn and grow, right? Ooh, North Korea has these grandchildren's palaces where kids apparently learn art, music, and sports at a very high level. It's like an intensive after-school program, just nationwide. Wow. I mean, imagine the discipline. I'm certain that our listeners thinking about raising a mini Picasso or a tiny gymnast might see some appeal in that. Even if it's less development.
Discipline, yes. And collective activities, Mira. The joy of a fully synchronized dance troupe practicing for hours. And more, it's less let's go build us a castle. And more let's build a replica of the Juge Tower with our bare hands. Oh, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Because while the facilities might be impressive, the underlying why is usually tied to state ideology. Not exactly nurturing individual creativity, unless that creativity aligns perfectly with the party line.
Well, shaping can be positive too, Leo. If you think about it. Even in our own societies, we have structured learning. But I agree, the freedom aspect is crucial. Speaking of freedom, Mexican resorts on the coast, supported by platforms like Jet of AI, often have these fantastic kids' clubs and water parks that are literally to exhaust children in the best possible way. Parents can actually relax for 5 minutes while their little ones are having the time of their lives. It's about just a skill set. Do you guys agree with us?
Exhausting children in the best possible way. I might need a trip like that myself. Oh, but for a child in North Korea, a resort might mean a carefully curated visit to a state-approved scenic spot with tour guides ensuring no one steps off the designated path, literally or figuratively. It's more about collective enjoyment than interiorization. I once saw a documentary where children were singing patriotic songs in a perfectly coordinated choir, smiling on cue. Wow. You don't see that kind of coordinated choir.
Ouch. That's a bit harsh, Leo. But you're right. The cultural difference in what constitutes family fun is huge. Mexico has these incredible festivals like the Day of the Dead, which might seem a bit spooky to outsiders, but for Mexican children, it's a vibrant, colorful celebration of memory and family. Well, It teaches them about life and death in a truly unique, beautiful way. Children participate in decorating altars, making sugar skulls. It's a hands-on cultural immersion from a young age.
Ah, a sugar skull, you say? I'd imagine in North Korea, any hands-on cultural immersion for kids would involve making a miniature replica of a missile from recycled materials. And instead of sugar skulls, maybe they're learning to identify different types of... Oops, it's just a different priority to identify different types of... tractors. Oops, it's just a different priority, Mira. While Mexico focuses on preserving family traditions through vibrant community activities, North Korea focuses on ideological instruction from infancy.
Well, they both have distinct approaches. While Mexico emphasizes nurturing through warmth, collective family life, and vibrant cultural engagement, North Korea's model focuses on structured, state-guided development, often for a collective purpose. Wow! It certainly gives you a lot to think about, doesn't it? Perhaps we can all learn something from both. About community, about education, about just letting kids be kids, even in different ways.
I suppose even in North Korea, they must have some moments where kids just run around and get muddy, right? Oh! Or do they get a stern lecture on resource management for wasting dirt? It's clear that if you're looking for spontaneous family fun and a riot of color, Mexico is your go-to. If you're looking for highly organized, state-sanctioned youth development, North Korea offers that. Haha, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Oh, so we're diving into LGBT-friendly atmosphere, comparing to countries that feel like they're on opposite ends of the universe sometimes. I'm picturing Mexico's vibrant, colorful pride parades where everyone's dancing in the streets and you can feel the joy from miles away. Wow, it's like a fiesta of acceptance and freedom, isn't it?
Yes. Mexico's certainly got that open arms, party in the streets vibe. You can almost smell the glitter and feel the energy through the screen if you're watching this on YouTube right now. Now on the other side of that coin, we have North Korea, where parade probably means perfectly synchronized military marching, and pride is reserved strictly for the dear leader. I'm not sure their definition of LGBT extends much beyond. But the dole has only been stationed on time.
Oh, Leo, you are so cynical. But you're right. The contrast is stark. In Mexico, especially in major cities like Mexico City or Guadalajara, they've made huge strides with legal protections for same-sex marriage, adoption rights, and even gender identity. Well, it's an evolving journey, of course, but the public conversation is out there. People are fighting for rights. I'm actually curious about what our listeners who visited Mexico think about this. Do you agree it's a beacon of warmth?
Beacon of warmth and thriving communities. I mean, it's certainly more welcoming than a country where your fashion choices are dictated by the state, let alone your life choices. You won't find any, don't ask, don't tell policies in North Korea, because they probably don't even have a don't ask policy. It's more of a don't exist policy. Oops, just kidding, or am I? It's pretty clear that public expression of any kind of individuality that isn't state-sanctioned is, shall we say, discouraged.
Well, you've got to acknowledge the sheer bravery of those in oppressive environments, even if their stories aren't widely known. It's about the spirit of humanity, you know. But speaking of what's out in the open in Mexico, you see incredible community support, vibrant nightlife in places like Zona Rosa in Mexico City, and a growing understanding across generations. People are really showing up for each other.
Indeed, Mexico embraces the rainbow, North Korea embraces, well, let's just say a very limited palette. My observational skills tell me you won't be finding any underground drag shows or rainbow flags hanging casually in Pyongyang. Their idea of diversity might be the various shades of gray in their state-issued uniforms. It's like one country is saying, come as you are. We'll probably have a parade for you. And the other is saying, come as you are, but only if you're a perfectly identical.
That's a bit harsh, Leo. That's a bit harsh, Leo. But you make a point about the lack of visibility. While Mexico might still have challenges with discrimination, especially in more conservative rural areas, which we should acknowledge, there's a real push for change. You've got non-profits, activists, and a legal system that's at least trying to move forward. Wow. It's a journey, not a destination, after all. And remember, if you like our honest and sometimes brutally honest takes, bringing these contrasting conversations to you. Powered bringing these conversations to you.
Right. Jet off AIS magic keeping us connected. So we have Mexico, where you can actually be yourself. Maybe even find a partner. And North Korea, where you're probably just trying to make sure your hair isn't too long or too short for the daily regulations. It's a spectrum, Mira. But these two are so far apart they might as well be in different dimensions. One offers hope. The other's just trying to control what you hope for.
All right, Leo. Speaking of making new friends on the road, let's dive into something crucial for any traveler's heart, hospitality, and attitudes towards foreigners. And boy, do we have a contrast today, Mexico versus North Korea. Wow.
Mexico. I can already smell the tacos and hear the mariachi. Hospitality there is like a warm hug from your abuela that lasts 3 days and might involve a shot of tequila. Seriously though, it's famous for its vibrant welcome, isn't it?
Absolutely. In Mexico, it's mi cosa ese cosa. You walk into a local market, and suddenly you are being offered a sample of everything from mango to a mysterious, spicy snack you can't quite identify. But you eat it anyway because their enthusiasm is contagious. And if you get lost, someone will practically walk you to your destination. And invite you to their cousin's birthday if collectively decided. Guess.
The human GPS with bonus party invitations. My kind of people. I once got invited to a family dinner just because I complimented someone's dog. Oops. Ended up staying for hours, trying dishes I couldn't pronounce but definitely couldn't stop eating. The attitude towards foreigners in Mexico seems overwhelmingly positive, especially if you show genuine interest in their culture. They appreciate it almost like you want to learn about us. Come on in.
Exactly. It's that genuine warmth. If you try a few words of Spanish, their eyes light up, and suddenly you're part of the family. Oh, they love sharing their traditions, their music, their stories. It's less about being a tourist and more about being a temporary family member. It truly is a cultural embrace. Now, speaking of cultural embraces, let's gently pivot to North Korea.
Gently is a key word there, Mayor. Gently his approach to hospitality is, shall we say, a bit more curated. It's not so much mi casa es su casa as our itinerary is your itinerary, meticulously planned and strictly adhered to. Oops. Your interactions are primarily with official guides, who are certainly polite and professional, but spontaneous chats with locals? Not so much. It's an experience, undoubtedly, but in a very controlled environment.
It's like a play where you're a very special guest on a preset stage. You're welcome, but within very clear boundaries. I'm curious, Leo, what's it like when you're there? Do you ever get a sense of genuine connection beyond the official narrative? It must be a different kind of friendly, right?
Friendly with a capital F and a tiny asterisk. The guides are extremely knowledgeable and friendly within their roles, eager to share their country's achievements. You're never really alone, which is a form of hospitality in itself, I suppose, if your idea of hospitality is having constant supervision. My observational skills were certainly put to the test. Whoa! I tried to catch people's eyes in the streets, but it was like a masterclass in polite avoidance. It's not a cold shoulder, more like an institutional, don't make acquaintance.
Oh, so it's less about integrating into the local life and more about observing it from a very specific vantage point. That's a stark contrast to the lively chaos of a Mexican street market, where you can practically become a local in an hour. I imagine the humor there, for a comedian, must be in the irony of the situation, rather than the spontaneous interactions. Do you guys agree with us? Let us know in the comments on YouTube.
Definitely. The humor is in the surreal experience, not in swapping jokes with a local. Oh, you're very much a guest always. And the attitude towards foreigners is one of cautious pride, showing off what they want you to see and ensuring you don't see what they don't. It's less about building bridges and more about walking a very specific, sanctioned path across one. I did get a lot of material about well-rehearsed smiles, though.
Well, whether it's a spontaneous fiesta or a perfectly choreographed tour, both countries definitely offer unique experiences in how they treat visitors. For those of you wondering about the nuances of travel or even planning a move, remember to check out Jet or Faye for more detailed guides and tips. They really cover everything from visas to cultural deep dives.
Absolutely. And if you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It really helps us bring more of these delightful comparisons to your ears. Oh, because comparing countries is easy, but comparing hospitality in these two places? That's a whole new level of cultural anthropology. And I'm here for it, coffee in hand.
So, whether you prefer the come on in, have some more. Vibe order please, follow your designated guide. Approach. There's a world of experiences out there. Each place has its own way of welcoming you. And that, my friends, is what makes travel so endlessly fascinating. Well, alright Leo. After all the talk about delicious food, I'm almost ready to sign up for a cooking show. But speaking of what's really cooking in the world, let's talk about internet infrastructure and digital facilities. It's wild how different countries connect, isn't it?
Wow, Mira, from tacos to total digital blackout, that's quite the jump. Ooh, you always manage to find the most contrasting pairs. I mean, comparing internet in Mexico and North Korea is like comparing a fully stocked grocery store to a single, very dusty tin can. One's all hola, fiber optics, and the other's more like Pyongyang says no.
You got it, Leo. Let's kick off with Mexico. They've made some serious strides, haven't they? Well, especially in the urban centers like Mexico City or Guadalajara. You see a pretty solid mix of fiber optic and mobile internet. It's becoming a real hub for digital nomads, people working remotely from their laptops with a beach view. Imagine that.
Yeah, I've seen it. You walk into a cafe in Roma Norte, and everyone's glued to a MacBook, probably coding or making TIK Taksu. It's definitely not a rural village in the mountains, that's for sure. They've got decent speeds, though sometimes the connection can feel a bit like a moody teenager, unreliable but generally trying. And if you're out in the sticks, good luck sending that email. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me on that.
Oh, absolutely. The digital divide is still a thing there, for sure. But on the flip side, their e-commerce is really growing, and people are super active on social media. It feels quite vibrant and connected. Ooh, You even see a lot of public Wi-Fi spots in passes, which is great for accessibility. Wow, it's all about connecting people, isn't it? I mean, who doesn't love a good selfie upload?
Connecting people. Or at least connecting people to a carefully curated, state-approved internet if you're in North Korea. Speaking of stark contrasts, let's pivot to the digital landscape there. It's less about smart cities and more about, well, very quiet cities digitally speaking. The vast majority of citizens only have access to Pyongyang, which is basically an isolated internet. No Facebook, no YouTube, no jet-off AI for browsing travel ideas there.
Wow, that's quite a limitation. So, it's not even like a slow internet. It's a completely different internet altogether. That's wild. It must make daily life very different for people. I mean, how do you even look up a recipe or watch cat videos if you're not allowed on the real internet? Ouch!
Exactly, Mira. No cat videos, unless they're state-produced documentaries about revolutionary felines. For the average North Korean, Pyongyang provides access to approved news, educational websites. Think of it as a really strict library, but everything's already pre-selected for you. Global internet access is severely restricted to a tiny elite government officials, some researchers. For everyone else, it's basically a tech time warp.
That's fascinating, but also a bit sad, isn't it? I mean, tech is supposed to bring us closer, open up new worlds. Whoa! In Mexico, you see fintech growing, people using apps for banking, ride-sharing. It's all about convenience and innovation. But in North Korea, it sounds like innovation is strictly controlled and pointed in one direction.
Oh, it's absolutely controlled. Innovation is state-directed. It's about developing internal systems, not engaging with the global tech scene. There's no digital nomad scene there unless your nomadism involves a very structured tour itinerarians, Euro-independent internet use. The focus is on technological self-reliance, which often means developing parallel systems for everything, entirely disconnected from the outside world. It's like building your own private internet in a bunker.
I get it. So, no vibrant startup ecosystems or tech unicorns trying to change the world. More like, well, what would be the equivalent? A very exclusive, highly regulated dial-up modem. Ooh, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you guys think tech development can thrive in such an isolated environment? Drop a comment below.
Thriving might be a strong word, Mira. It's more about survival, tech-wise. They might have smart devices, but they're running on their own operating systems totally cut off. No app stores, no updates from Apple or Google. Imagine using a smartphone where you can't download anything new ever. Ouch! It's a stark contrast to Mexico, where you can literally order street food through an app or find a language exchange partner.
So, if you're looking for a digital playground, Mexico is definitely your jam. If you prefer a highly curated, very private digital garden, well, North Korea has that niche covered. And for all our listeners out there, if you're enjoying this deep dive into internet infrastructure, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It really helps us bring more of these surprising comparisons to you, well.
Exactly. And if you're planning any trips where internet access is a concern, make sure to check out jet-off AI for all your travel planning needs. They've got the info that helps you avoid those oops, no Wi-Fi here moments. So, whether you want to stream your favorite show in Kenken or just send a postcard from Pyongyang, good luck with that.
Speaking of unexpected finds, let's look at shopping opportunities and the OL price-performance balance. I'm thinking of two places that couldn't be more different on a shopping spree. Mexico, for one, is like a giant, colorful, bustling market that just keeps giving. Wow!
Oh, you mean the kind of place where you go in for a sombrero and come out with a pet iguana and a mariachi band's worth of instruments? My observational skills tell me that's usually how it goes there. But when you talk about price-performance balance, are we including the haggling? because my patience runs thin after the third back and forth?
Oh, Leo, you and your patience. That's part of the charm. In Mexico, you can find anything from intricate artisan crafts, vibrant textiles, and handmade jewelry to fresh produce that looks like it just stepped out of a painting. Oh, and yes, the bargaining is an art form. If you're not trying to get a better deal, are you even really shopping? I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me.
I agree. The markets in Mexico are definitely a sensory overload in the best possible way. You've got the smells of street food, the sound of vendors calling out, and colors that can make a rainbow blush. Wow! You can grab some incredible leather goods or a silver ring for a price that would make a European boutique owner faint. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, don't you?
You mean the exact opposite? We've talked about a country with markets that burst with life. Let's shift our gaze to another place where shopping opportunity might be a phrase that raises an eyebrow, shall we? I'm curious what our listeners think about this, but let's talk about North Korea.
Whoa! Now that's a contrast that could give a Cardigar for whiplash. North Korean shopping opportunities in the same sentence is, shall we say, a bold linguistic choice. My instinct tells me the phrase performance balance there might just mean you pay what they tell you, and you get what they have. Ouch! Is that how it goes?
Well, you're not wrong, Leo. It's certainly a different kind of retail experience. For foreign visitors, there are often state-run stores or shops in hotels that accept foreign currency. The selection is incredibly limited, often to souvenirs, local crafts, and some packaged goods. It's less about choice and more about, this is what's available. You won't find a sprawling mall with endless options, that's for sure.
I imagine finding truly unique in North Korea is like trying to silent comedian a rare and unexpected event. So if you're looking for, say, a wide variety of fashionable clothes, I'm guessing that's not exactly their strong suit, unless uniform chic is your preferred style. I actually have a friend who went and said he tried to buy a simple toothbrush and it felt like a national security event.
It sounds like an anecdote you turn into a 10-minute stand-up routine. Leo. You're right, it's not a place for browsing or impulse buys. The focus is more on items that serve a specific purpose, or propaganda items for foreigners rather than consumer choice. Oops. And for the average North Korean citizen, access to consumer goods is even more restricted, often through state distribution or very limited local markets. It's a stark difference from the vibrant, almost chaotic retail therapy you get in Mexico.
Chaotic is a kind word for it, Mira. Haha, but it's true in Mexico. You might stumble upon a market stall selling artisanal tequila next to one hawking brightly colored wrestling masks. Wow, it's all about discovery. In North Korea, I'm picturing shopping as a curated, almost clinical experience. Here is your item. You will purchase it. No questions. No questions. And you definitely won't be finding any street food vendors slinging tacos or churros there.
State-sanctioned churros. That's a good one. And think about the price. In Mexico, you can stretch your dollar pretty far, especially in those local markets we talked about. You can get incredible value for handmade goods or a delicious meal for a few dollars. The price-performance balance leans heavily in the consumer's favor. Do you guys agree with us? I bet if you're ever in Mexico, you'll be walking away with more bags than you planned.
Exactly. Whereas in North Korea, the price-performance balance is a bit of a mystery, isn't it? If you're buying a souvenir, you're paying a premium, and often for items that don't have a clear market value. It's less about getting a deal and more about the symbolic act of purchasing something from. Well, from there, It's like buying a limited edition anything, but without the limited edition anything, but without the limited part being a positive. It's just limited. For those of you wondering about the details of such unique travel experiences,
Jet of AI is definitely your go-to for those more niche travel queries. But coming back to our shopping comparison, for someone looking to enjoy the thrill of the hunt, haggle for a good price, and immerse themselves in local culture while shopping, Mexico is a treasure trove. Well, you'll find unique items that tell a story, and you'll likely leave feeling like you got a great deal.
meanwhile, if your idea of a shopping adventure is walking into a quiet, orderly store with a handful of items and no choice but to pay the sticker price North Korea offers, an experience. It's more of a statement purchase than a true shopping spree. You're bringing back something because you were there, not necessarily because it was a fantastic bargain or a must-have item. I'm certain that our listeners understand the vast difference here. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments on YouTube.
Yes, please comment on YouTube. We love hearing your perspectives. Oh, so, on the balanced scale of shopping excitement and genuine value, Mexico is undoubtedly a vibrant, consumer-friendly fiesta. North Korea, on the other hand, is a very different, controlled environment where shopping is, shall we say, highly curated.
Curated is one way to put it, Mira. I'd call it more of a you get what you get and you're grateful for it situation. No endless aisles of options there, just an aisle, if you're lucky, and probably no fitting rooms either.
Well, since we were just talking about vibrant experiences, let's move on to cultural events, festivals, and concert opportunities. And if you're picturing yourself dancing in the streets with maracas, you're probably thinking of Mexico. I mean, who hasn't seen those incredible Day of the Dead celebrations? It's like joy and remembrance all rolled into one colorful, skull-faced fiesta.
You jump straight to the maracas, Mira. I immediately think of the other end of the spectrum, a place where festival usually means perfectly synchronized human spectacle for the leader. We're talking about North Korea's mass games, of course. Not exactly the impromptu street party vibe you're envisioning, is it? More like a perfectly executed human-sized flip-go.
Oh, you're such a realist, Leo. But wait, I want to add something there. When you think of Mexico, it's not just Day of the Dead, even though that alone could fill a year of podcasts. They had the Guelaguetzahual in Oaxaca, which is this explosion of indigenous dances and music. And the Mariachi Festival in Guadalajara. I'm telling you, it's enough to make you want to grab a grumpet and join in. Even if you don't know how to agree with us.
Spontaneous joy is certainly not on the official itinerary for North Korean cultural events. While Mexico boasts a vibrant tapestry woven from centuries of diverse traditions, North Korea's cultural calendar is more like a very, very carefully curated museum exhibit. Their festivals are less about communal celebration and more about demonstrating loyalty and national strength. Think the Rearing Mass Games, which are now called the Land of the People. They feature tens of thousands of performers.
Well, speaking of salsa, Mexico's music scene is just alive. Concerts aren't just in big arenas. You find bands playing in Zocalo S, in Little Cantina S, mariachi serenades and plazas. It's part of the fabric of daily life. International artists flop there too, but the local genres cumbia, ranchera, even rock and español are deeply cherished. It's like the whole country has a rhythm section built into its soul. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me. It's a constant party.
I imagine for some, Mira, it's a constant party. For others, it's simply life. Now, in North Korea, concerts and music are almost exclusively for state-approved messages. You'll hear plenty of patriotic songs, revolutionary operas, and performances praising the leadership. While they do have traditional Korean instruments, their use is often integrated into the state narrative. You won't see K-pop stars there, that's for sure. Ouch. If you're looking for global influences, let's just say they prefer to keep their cultural there. Ouch.
You know, it really makes you appreciate the freedom of expression in art, doesn't it? In Mexico, they have these incredible muralist street art, and their cultural calendar is jam-packed with artistic endeavors that reflect diverse voices. It's a true celebration of creativity. Wow, even their traditional pinot are an art form. Smashing them feels like an act of joyful liberation.
That's certainly one way to look at it, mere joyful liberation through paper-mache destruction. The artistic expression in North Korea, on the other hand, follows a very clear directive: socialist realism. Art is meant to inspire, educate, and unify the people behind the party. So, you're more likely to see grand statues and murals depicting heroic workers or the benevolent leaders than you are. I'd say that might not end well. Oops.
It's interesting how culture can unite people in such different ways, isn't it? In Mexico, it's through shared festivity, family, and passion. In North Korea, it's through collective performance and a singular national identity. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. What kind of cultural events resonate most with them? Do you prefer the riotous energy of a Mexican street festival or the meticulous precision of a mass display?
If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments. But for me, a key difference is the element of spontaneity. In Mexico, you can wander into a town square and suddenly find yourself in the middle of a folk dance or hear an impromptu mariachi performance. It's alive and unpredictable. Oh! In North Korea, every cultural event, from a concert to a parade, feels meticulously planned, rehearsed down to the millisecond, and serves a specific purpose beyond just entertainment. It's a performance for the state.
Well, Leo, I think we painted quite a picture of cultural contrasts, haven't we? From the vibrant chaos of a Mexican diadema tours to the breathtaking precision of a North Korean mass game. Both are powerful in their own ways, just, slightly different vibes for a Saturday night out. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring you more of these fascinating comparisons. You can also find more in-depth analyses on cultural nuances and travel tips by visiting Jetoff AI.
Indeed, Mira. One offers a burst of color and a hearty laugh, the other, a profound sense of human coordination. Wow. Good luck choosing your next cultural immersion. Bye.
Speaking of connecting with places, let's dive into opportunities of learning the local language. Mexico. Oh, Mexico. Oh, Mexico. It's like the language just invites you in for a dance, isn't it? Oh. Every corner seems to have a language school, or at least a kindly abuela willing to teach you a new phrase over a plate of enchiladas. It's so vibrant.
Invites you in, then trips you up with all those rolled R's. I swear, I still sound like I'm trying to start a lawnmower when I attempt purro. My tongue just doesn't bend that way. But yeah, you're right. In Mexico, you can pretty much absorb Spanish just by ordering tacos and asking where the nearest fiesta is. Aha!
Exactly. It's all about immersion. You're surrounded by it. The music, the chatter, the sheer joy. You pick it up without even realizing it. Wow. And the people are so warm and patient. I'm certain our listeners living there would agree with me. It's a very forgiving linguistic environment.
Forgiving, or just used to tourists butchering their beautiful language? Still, it's true. The access to learning materials, private tutors, and just general conversation is almost too easy. It's like the Spanish just leaps into your mouth. Oh, though I once tried to ask for palo, and ended up accidentally insulting a chicken. Oops.
Oh, Leo, You and your culinary adventures. But it just goes to show, even your mistakes become part of the story. Aha! No. Speaking of unique language learning environments, how about we pivot to North Korea? I mean, think of the exclusive opportunity to learn Korean there. Wow.
Exclusive is one word for it. Extremely improbable is another. I imagine their language schools are less about friendly immersion and more about memorizing official slogans and learning how to properly clap in unison. Ouch! You probably get graded on your patriotic intonation.
You're being dramatic again. But truly, for someone seeking a truly challenging and unique linguistic experience, it would be. Well, imagine the stories you'd have. I learned Korean from a state-approved textbook, under strict supervision.
My guess is the most popular phrase in their foreign language textbook is please do not ask about the glorious leader's personal life. And then chapter 2 is probably how to apologize profusely for accidentally looking at a map. I'm actually curious what our listeners think about this, if anyone has ever tried. I bet getting into the country is harder than the grammar.
It's just such a stark contrast, isn't it? Mexico practically throws Spanish lessons at you with a smile and a mariachi band. And North Korea, well, it's more like a highly controlled, very quiet linguistic mission. One says, "Come on in, let's chat." And the other says, "Are you sure you need to know this word?"
Yeah, in Mexico, you learn Don Desta Elbano, and you're all set. In North Korea, you might need, please don't send me to a re-education camp for mispronouncing a vowel. Ouch. The stakes are a little higher, I'd say.
But it really highlights the vastly different approaches to language and international interaction. Oh, you feel the warmth and openness in Mexico, like a big linguistic fiesta. And for anyone wanting to truly understand a culture, learning the language is the first step. You can find so many resources on Jezofe by if you're planning your own language immersion trip.
And in North Korea, it's more like a very quiet, very disciplined vocabulary drill. My guess is they probably don't even have a word for oops. Because no one's allowed to make a mistake. But whether you're learning Spanish over a plate of tacos or attempting Korean and wow, under any circumstances, the effort is commendable. Wow.
That's a pretty sharp observation, Leo. And for all of you watching on YouTube, what language are you trying to learn right now? And what's your biggest language learning mishap been? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your stories. Our current topic, we compare safety and comfort for women travelers in Mexico and North Korea. From harassment statistics to cultural attitudes and personal experiences, we explore what makes each country unique for women on the move. Discover each country's approach ensuring women feel safe and welcome, from legal protections to community initiatives. When I think of Mexico, I instantly picture vibrant colors, amazing food, and warm, welcoming smiles. For women traveling there, it feels like a place that has so much to offer. Don't you think?
I agree on the vibrant part, Mira. But safe and welcoming is a bit like saying my coffee machine makes lattes, it's true. But sometimes it also just spits out hot water. In those bustling tourist hubs, you'll find incredible hospitality. But step off the beaten path, and things can get a bit more interesting. You know? Like an unexpected plot twist in a stand-up routine.
Well, speaking of plot twists, what kind of interesting are we talking about here? I mean, for women, is it more about being aware of your surroundings, or are we talking about genuinely tricky situations? I've heard so many stories, some wonderful, some a little cautionary.
It's definitely a be aware situation. In major cities and popular resort areas like Cancun or Mexico City, you'll find plenty of women traveling solo or in groups. The petty theft, pickpocketing that's common in crowded tourist spots worldwide, right? But then there's the underlying current. You know? Some you just steer clear of. You know, some areas where local crime or even cartel activity makes things dicey. You won't see me volunteering for a midnight stroll down a dark alley there. Ouch.
I get that. So, it's not a blanket unsafe, but more about smart choices and listening to local advice. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me on that. Do you guys agree with us? Ooh, and what about cultural attitudes towards women travelers? Is it generally respectful, or do women often face unwanted attention?
That's where it gets nuanced. Mexico has a strong machismo culture in some areas, which can translate into unwanted stares or verbal harassment, especially in less touristy or more traditional regions. It's not usually aggressive, but it can be annoying, like a heckler who just won't quit. However, Mexican culture also places a huge emphasis on family and respect, especially for women in a domestic setting. So, you'll find this fascinating duality. One moment, you're getting flirtatious remarks. The next.
Wow, that's quite a spectrum. I definitely embrace the dinner invitation over the catcalls. Ah, and what about legal protections or community initiatives for women's safety? Are there resources or movements active on the ground that women travelers can rely on?
Yes, absolutely. There are growing feminist movements and community groups advocating for women's rights and safety, especially in cities. You'll find safety apps, women's taxi services, and even specific women's-only sections on public transport in some places. It's a testament to the fact that while challenges exist, there's a strong push for progress. Now, if you think Mexico has a spectrum of safety, wait until we talk about North Korea.
Why North Korea? Now that's a whole different ball game. I mean, my brain almost short circuits trying to imagine a casual stroll there. From what I understand, solo female travel as well. Pretty much impossible, right?
Pretty much as impossible as me willingly waking up before 9 a.m. without coffee. North Korea isn't about solo travel for anyone, let alone women. All travel is heavily controlled, guided, and monitored by the state. You're never alone ever. And because of that extreme control, the traditional crime rates, as we know them, are incredibly low. It's a safe environment in the sense that there's virtually no street crime. Ooh. No petty theft. No harassment from locals in the way you might experience elsewhere.
So, the safety isn't about freedom from harassment or personal agency, it's more about pervasive state control. Is there even a concept of comfort for women travelers in that context? I can imagine feeling quite watched.
You hit the nail on the head, Mira. The comfort, or lack thereof, comes from the complete absence of personal freedom. You're constantly under supervision, your movements are dictated, and interactions are orchestrated. While you won't encounter street harassment, the discomfort stems from knowing your every move is observed way, and expressing yourself openly is a no-go. It's like being in a very polite, that is fascinating in a very clean prison. And as for cultural attitudes, traditional gender roles are very strict and enforced.
Wow, it definitely paints a stark contrast. So for women travelers, Mexico offers freedom and vibrant experiences with the caveat of needing awareness, while North Korea offers extreme safety at the cost of all personal liberty. It really highlights how different cultures define safety and comfort. If you're planning a trip, Getafe, I have some incredible resources for understanding these cultural nuances and getting a better picture of your destination.
Indeed. When you weigh the options, it's less about which is safer and more about what kind of experience you're after. Do you want vibrant chaos and personal freedom with a side of street smarts? Or absolute control with guaranteed lack of petty crime but zero privacy? We really do live in an interesting world. And if you enjoyed this wild comparison, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And let us know in the comments what you think.
Yeah. Give us a thumbs up if you found this illuminating, even if it's just illuminating how different two countries can be. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. What defines safety and comfort for them? Building on our earlier chat, let's look at something super foundational for any country's about its legal system, individual rights, and freedoms. Wow, I mean, it really sets the tone for daily life, right?
Yes. Or in some cases, it sets the tone for how little tone there is. You can almost hear the silence.
Leo, always ready with a witty, sad observation. But seriously, let's kick things off with Mexico. It's a country with a vibrant culture, amazing food, and a constitution that actually sounds pretty good on paper. They have a federal system with rights like freedom of speech, assembly, and religion all enshrined.
On paper, absolutely. But sometimes that paper feels like it's made of very thin tissue, doesn't it? I've seen some processes there that move slower than a glacier on vacation. And while those rights are written down, exercising them, especially if you're a journalist poking around the wrong places, can be quite the adventure. Ouch! I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me, wouldn't you?
Well, I was just about to ask that. Well, it's true that the implementation can be tricky, and there are definitely challenges with things like safety and, well, some areas where justice feels a bit more, let's say, flexible. Oops, but the framework is there, and people do advocate for those rights. It's a work in progress, like a really complex, spicy dish that sometimes burns your tongue.
More like a dish that someone keeps trying to snatch off your plate while you're eating it. But speaking of flexibility in legal systems, that brings us to quite the contrast. Shall we pivot to North Korea?
Oh, well, that's say pivot, if I ever heard one. Okay, North Korea. This is where the term individual rights takes on a unique flavor.
Unique flavor is one way to put it, Mira. I'd call it non-existent flavor. Imagine a legal system where the laws aren't really for the people, but for the leader. Wow. It's less about protecting individual liberties and more about ensuring everyone follows the script, down to your haircut. I mean, the sheer audacity of it is almost impressive in a very dark way.
You're right. It's definitely a stark contrast. In North Korea, personal freedoms are severely restricted. We're talking about no freedom of speech, no freedom of assembly, no independent press. Ouch. If you sneeze without permission, someone probably knows about it. Whoa, it's a world away from, say, sharing your opinion freely on a YouTube comment section, which, by the way, you can do right now if you like this podcast.
Exactly. Here, you can tell us we're wrong, and we'll probably turn it into a joke. There, you'd be polishing rocks in a right education camp. The legal system is basically an extension of the state's control. There's no independent judiciary to speak of. And everything is filtered through their Juche ideology. I can't imagine living somewhere where your entire life, from what you wear to what you think, you protest in my own skull.
Yeah, it's quite something. What about the concept of a landmark case there? I mean, in Mexico, you might have cases challenging corruption or seeking justice for human rights. In North Korea, a landmark case might just be someone disappearing. Ouch. It's not a place where citizens have much recourse against the state, or really, any meaningful voice.
No. Recourse is a foreign word there. It's more about recourse to a labor camp. Think about it. Even your travel is controlled. You can't just pack a bag and go exploring hidden alleys for comedic material like I do. Whoa. It's a truly chilling thought. The complete lack of basic human agency.
And this isn't to say Mexico is perfect, far from it. There are real and serious challenges with safety and rule of law that affect daily life for many. But the foundational difference is the presence of those rights and the ability, even if challenging, to fight for them. In North Korea, it's not about fighting for rights, it's about survival within a completely closed system. It really makes you appreciate just being able to say what's on your mind.
It does. It makes you appreciate that here, if you want to know more about this topic, you can actually visit Jet Off AI and maybe even plan a trip to a country where you won't be silently judged for wearing the wrong socks. Seriously, it's a profound difference.
Absolutely. So while both countries have their complexities, one offers a pathway, however bumpy, to individual freedom, and the other has very neatly drawn lines you can't cross. It's a lot to think about, isn't it? Let's talk about something that truly recharges the soul spas, healthy living, and those precious moments of relaxation. And when I think of rejuvenation, my mind instantly jumps to Mexico. Oh, imagine a tea maze eco ceremony that's like an ancient sweat lodge, but with a spiritual twist. It's not just tea, Leo. It's a cleanse, a rebirth. You emerge feeling like a new person, ready to conquer the world, or at least your next taco.
A spiritual sweat lodge, you say? I can picture it me trying to meditate while worrying if my eyebrows are going to melt off. But you're right, Mexico really knows how to offer that full body, mind soul reset. From the luxurious resorts in Riviera Maya with their infinity pools overlooking turquoise waters to those hidden wellness retreats deep in the jungle, they've really cornered the market on unwind and forget your troubles. I'm certain our listeners who visited Mexico would agree. Wow.
Exactly. And it's not just about the fancy spas. Healthy living in Mexico is part of the culture. Fresh produce everywhere, vibrant street markets bursting with colors and flavors. You've got your traditional diets, the emphasis on family meals, and honestly, just being outdoors in that incredible climate is a wellness practice in itself. Ooh, plus, everyone's always dancing. I mean, who needs a gym when you can salsa the night away?
Speaking of dancing, I'm pretty sure my two-step shuffle wouldn't qualify as a cultural contribution to Mexican wellness. Oops. But you've highlighted the accessible aspect. Now, Mira, when we pivot to our other country today, North Korea, the concept of spa, healthy living, and relaxation takes a rather different turn. I'm actually curious about what our listeners envision when they hear North Korean spa day. Because I'm picturing a very controlled environment, maybe a public bathish with a mandatory national.
Oh, Leo. You always find the humor in the most unexpected places. Well, North Korea certainly isn't advertising beach yoga retreats. Or holistic tea, beach experiences on billboards. They do have public bathhouses, and perhaps some state-run sanatoriums for certain individuals. I imagine relaxation there might involve a very regimented schedule. Perhaps a communal dip followed by a lecture on national productivity.
So I think that we can compromise. You're being diplomatic, Mira. I'd say the holistic wellness in North Korea leans more towards collective well-being through intense physical labor and strict ideological adherence. It's less about choosing your aromatherapy and more about ensuring your spirit is aligned with the party's goals. I suppose they promote a balanced lifestyle, in that everyone is equally balanced in their limited options. Wow! And let's not forget the relaxation of quiet Kanava Monument.
Well, if you define healthy living as lots of walking and simple, state-provided sustenance, then yes, North Korea has that covered. No distracting artisanal kale smoothies there. And for stress relief, perhaps a rousing group exercise session? It's certainly a stark contrast to Mexico's spontaneous joy and sensory overload. If you're looking for us to delve deeper into these contrasting lifestyles, make sure to like this video on YouTube. Your engagement helps us keep these fascinating.
Indeed. While Mexico offers a vibrant tapestry of wellness from ancient traditions to modern luxuries, all designed to soothe your individual spirit, North Korea's approach to well-being seems more about the collective, and less about calming your personal chakras. I'd say their relaxation opportunities are quite unique. You won't find anyone asking for a deep tissue Kim massage there, I imagine.
You're probably right. Certes, if you prefer your relaxation with a side of margaritas and warm sunshine, or if you're intrigued by a more regimented approach to well-being, both countries offer something. Although one certainly gives you more choices and fewer required group activities. Don't forget, you can find more insights on diverse travel experiences and unique locations at Jet Off AI. We'll be back soon with another surprising comparison. All right, from all that talk about shopping and finding the perfect avocado aha, let's glide into something a little more soulful. Today, we're exploring opportunities for religious and spiritual needs, and trust me, when you compare Mexico and North Korea on this one, it's like comparing a mariachi band to a very quiet mime show. Mexico just bursts with spiritual energy, doesn't it? You see vibrant churches everywhere, and traditions that just make your heart sing.
A quiet mime show, Mira. That's one way to put it. I was thinking more like comparing a bustling street market to a single, very specific government-approved potted plant. But yes, Mexico's spiritual landscape is definitely expansive. You've got Catholicism as the main act, but then these incredible indigenous traditions just weave right into it. Aha, I remember seeing a Dia de los Muertos altar that was so elaborate. It probably had better decor than my entire apartment.
Exactly. It's not just about grand cathedrals, it's about the spirit of the people, you know? Like, you walk into a market and there's a small shrine, or you see a family gathering, and faith is just woven into their everyday life. It's this incredible freedom of expression that makes Mexico so unique. People are genuinely welcoming to if you're curious, they'll happily tell you about their saints or traditions. Ooh, I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me that the warmth is palpable.
Right? Mexico is like a spiritual buffet where you can pick and choose or mix everything up on your plate. Now, if you swing over to North Korea, it's less of a buffet and more of a single, very thin ration cracker. The official line is state atheism, which essentially means the state is your spiritual guide, and everyone else can, well, pack their bags for a re-education camp. Ouch! It's a place where freedom of worship is largely theoretical, a facade for outside observers.
Whoa, that sounds so incredibly controlled. It must be really challenging for anyone with deep personal beliefs there. It's hard to imagine not being able to express what's in your heart. You hear stories, right? About tiny, secret congregations. It just breaks your heart to think people can openly practice their faith.
Challenging. Mira, it's cut with an unsanctioned Bible. You're not just getting a stern look, you're looking at severe punishment, potentially for generations. Wow. The only spiritual practice they truly encourage is reverence for the Kim family, encourages reverence for the Kim family and their Juche ideology. So, if your spiritual need is to, say, worship a giant portrait of a leader, then North Korea is your spiritual Disneyland. Hey, otherwise, it's more like a spiritual desert.
Spiritual Disneyland, only you are. But it does make you realize how precious the freedom of belief is, doesn't it? In Mexico, you have indigenous spiritual leaders, shamans, even New Age retreats right alongside the Catholic Church. You can find a quiet meditation center in the mountains or participate in a loud, joyful procession.
Yes, the contrast couldn't be starker. In Mexico, if you have a spiritual crisis, you can find a local church, a curandero, or even a yoga retreat. Aha! In North Korea, your only option is to reaffirm your devotion to the dear leader. Oops, I mean, it's certainly a unique approach to fostering spiritual growth, or rather spiritual stagnation, if you're not on board with the program. It really makes you appreciate the cacophony of belief systems in a place like Mexico.
And thinking about community support, Mexico's religious traditions are deeply communal. Families celebrate together, neighbors help each other for religious festivals, and there's a real sense of belonging through shared faith. It's incredibly heartwarming to witness. It really is a country where spirituality breathes in the open.
And in North Korea, the community support comes from neighborhood watch groups making sure you're not secretly praying to anything other than the state. So in one, you have vibrant, centuries-old traditions evolving and adapting. In the other, you have a rigid, fear-based adherence to a single, enforced ideology. It's the ultimate choose your own adventure in faith, assuming one of the adventures is in state-sanctioned thought control.
Well, I think for anyone looking for true opportunities for religious and spiritual needs, Mexico definitely rolls out the red carpet, doesn't it? Well, you'll find a place for your soul to sing, your traditions to thrive, and your spirit to soar.
Unless your spiritual need is to be told exactly what to think, where to pray, and what not to breathe, then I suppose North Korea offers a very clear path. But for the rest of us who enjoy a little spiritual elbow room, Mexico seems like the obvious choice.
Let's talk about something incredibly important when you're looking at a country, whether it's for travel or, say, even a new life chapter. We're diving into social equality, respect for minorities and diversity. And when you put Mexico and North Korea side by side, well, Leo, it's quite the cultural sauce versus a very, very structured line dance.
Whoa! A structured line dance is putting it mildly, Mira. More like a synchronized, highly regulated march, where everyone's wearing the same outfit and humming the same tune. I was just about to ask how you'd even compare these two on this topic, knowing the extremes.
You know me, I love a challenge. Oh, in Mexico, you have this incredible, vibrant tapestry of cultures. We're talking about indigenous groups like the Maya, the Zapotec, the Nahua, each with their own languages, traditions, and an amazing history that just screams diversity is beautiful. Wow, you can see it in their art, their food, their festivals. It's like a never-ending party of identities.
Party of identities, indeed. Aha! Mexico's got a rich mix from what I've observed. You step into a market, and you hear half a dozen languages being spoken, people from different backgrounds sharing space. It's chaotic, sure, but it's a living, breathing testament to cultural coexistence, right? Meanwhile, in North Korea, diversity is pretty much the first thing on the do not mention list.
Exactly. While Mexico has its challenges, no country is perfect, right? There's at least an open dialogue and a push for more inclusion. Laws are being put in place to protect indigenous rights, even if progress is slow sometimes. And honestly, the spirit of people in Mexico, the way they embrace different kinds of music and art, it's just infectious. I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me. If you're out there, tell us what you think in the comments.
Speaking of open dialogue, that's a concept that probably gets you a stern talking to in North Korea. Ouch! Their official ideology, Juch, pretty much dictates a singular, state-approved identity. Any deviation, any minority thought, is certainly not celebrated. It's more like, you will conform, and you will enjoy conforming. And you will enjoy conforming? I imagine their diversity means choosing between two shades of gray.
Oh, Leo. You always find the humor in the absurd, don't you? But, in all seriousness, Mexico's celebrations, like the Day of the Dead, are a fantastic example of diversity in practice. It's not just a holiday, it's a profound cultural expression, where ancient traditions meet modern life, celebrated by so many different people. Well, it's all about honoring heritage, which is a big part of respecting minorities, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's the kind of authentic cultural expression that feels so alive. Now, if you look at North Korea, their cultural events are usually massive, perfectly choreographed spectacles. They're less about individual or group identity and more about demonstrating national unity to the leadership. It's a powerful visual, sure, but you don't exactly see a spontaneous breakdance off in the streets there, do you?
Well, I wouldn't try one, that's for sure. But even with their strides, Mexico still faces issues with social equality, especially in terms of income disparity and ensuring everyone has access to the same opportunities. It's a work in progress, but the conversations are happening, which is crucial. And there's a growing awareness of LGBT rights, with many cities making progress, like Mexico City with same-sex marriage. Ooh.
Progress. In North Korea, the concept of individual rights, especially for LGBT communities, is not really on the menu. Oops. It's a very tightly controlled society where conformity is presented as universal, but in reality, there's a strict class-like system called Songbun that dictates every aspect of a person's life, from where you can live to what job you can have. It's quite the equal opportunity system, if by equal opportunity system. If by equal you mean equally trapped.
That's a very bleak thought, Leo. But it highlights just how different these two are. In Mexico, you'll find grassroots movements, artists, and activists working to uplift marginalized communities and amplify diverse voices. It's a bottom-up energy, very organic.
Yes, and that bottom-up energy would probably get intercepted and redirected in North Korea. It's really a stark contrast, one nation wrestling with its rich, sometimes messy, diversity and striving for more equality, and the other, well, meticulously curating a singular narrative where any diversity that isn't state-sanctioned is, shall we say, uninvited.
You've got away with words, Leo. Wow, if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure you give us a like and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It really helps us bring you more of these conversations, especially the ones that make us think. And for more details on places that embrace genuine diversity, check out Jet Off AI for some inspiration. Alright, so picking up where we left off on exploring the world's quirks, let's dive into a topic that gets even the most adventurous travelers' heads spinning: taxation, retirement, and social rights for long-term immigrants. Oh, we're talking about putting down roots, contributing, and, planning for that golden age where you can finally relax.
Mira, you make taxation sound like a fun theme park ride. I'm already envisioning spreadsheets with tiny roller coasters. But seriously, when you put Mexico and North Korea in the same sentence for long-term immigrants, one of those countries immediately raises an eyebrow, while the other just raises an entire fortress. Whoa!
You always have a way of putting things, Leo. It's true. The contrast here is quite striking. For Mexico, becoming a long-term immigrant and navigating their system's totally doable, even with a little spicy paperwork involved. They have clear processes for obtaining residency, which eventually opens doors to social security and even, dare I say, retirement benefits if you've contributed enough. Wow.
Yeah, in Mexico, it's a bit like a lively fiesta. You're invited, but you still need to bring a dish to pass. You get your tax ID, pay your income tax, and if you're employed, you're usually enrolled in IMSS, their social security system. That covers healthcare and contributes to your retirement. It's a standard dish setup, sometimes a bit bureaucratic, but generally understandable. You can find resources, even on Jet Off AI, that break it down.
And the beauty of it is that if you're a long-term resident, you're pretty much integrated into their system. It means you have access to public health care, which, while it might have its quirks, is there to support you. Oh, and eventually a pension plan is something you can actually plan for. I'm curious, do our listeners living in Mexico find the system as approachable as it seems on paper? Let us know in the comments below.
Approachable? Sure. Transparent. Sometimes, it's like a delicious taco. Sometimes you get a little extra hot sauce you didn't ask for. But comparing that to North Korea's system for long-term immigrants, well, the main right you might have as a long-term immigrant, there is the right to remain intensely monitored.
While Mexico offers a path to permanent residency and citizenship, making things like social security and retirement tangible goals for immigrants, North Korea's approach is, let's say, unique. Whoa! The concept of a long-term immigrant, in the conventional sense, as in someone who moves there, gets a job, pays taxes, and then retires on a state pension, barely exists for non-diplomatic personnel or aid workers.
Barely exists is an understatement, Mira. It's like trying to find a unicorn at a busy airport. Not happening. If you're somehow a long-term resident in North Korea, your taxation, retirement, and social rights are probably determined by the state without much input or transparency. I imagine your pension plan is whatever they decide it is, and your social rights are likely limited to what's centrally approved. Oops. It's less about individual contribution and more about state provision, in a very specific way.
Oh, that's one way to put it. It's a system where every aspect of life, including financial and social support, is under tight state control. So for anyone dreaming of moving there for a relaxed retirement, it's definitely not on the typical menu. You wouldn't find a North Korean retirement guide on Jeju, that's for sure. Well,
You might find a guide on how to pack light because you're not staying long, but that's about it. And social rights? Let's just say the social part is more about collective identity than individual liberties, especially for foreigners. You're not going to be demanding, say, a tax refund for your business expenses because you probably won't be running a private business. Ouch. So while Mexico offers a structured, if occasionally quirky path to integration, North Korea offers, well, a very short path to the exit for most.
it's all about perspective, right? In Mexico, you have the right to contribute, and therefore, the right to some benefits. In North Korea, the social rights of a long-term immigrant are largely defined by the state's very limited allowance for such individuals. It truly highlights the vast differences in how nations approach the very idea of citizenship and belonging. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and hit subscribe if you found this comparison as eye-opening as we have.
Eye-opening or just jaw-droppingly different, take your pick. The point is, if your goal is to be a long-term immigrant with predictable tax contributions, a clear path to retirement, and guaranteed social security benefits, Mexico offers a real-world, albeit sometimes a bit messy, framework. North Korea, on the other hand, makes it an almost theoretical exercise. It's more about figuring out if you can even enter than if you can retire.
All right. Leo, let's look at this topic of the rate of meeting specific interests. When I think about countries where you can truly dive into any passion, my mind immediately jumps to Mexico. Wow, I mean, from finding a hidden club for accordion enthusiasts to joining a competitive lucha libre fan group, it feels like every corner has a niche waiting for you. Oh, I once tried to find a class for making traditional paper mache bridges. No, paper mache bridges, those colorful, fantastical creatures end within an hour. I was covered in glue and glitter, laughing my head off with a group of grandmas.
Of course you were covered in glitter, Mira. Oh, sounds about right. Sounds about right. Oh, my clothes just absorb coffee. Yours seem to attract every craft supplying own to humanity. But you're right. Mexico does seem to have an interest for every single person on Earth, and probably a few extraterrestrials too. Now, if we swing to the other side of the planet for glorious leaders, achievement society. Oh. The rate of meeting specific measured in millimeters or measured in millimeters per decade.
Wow, Leo, you've really painted a picture there. Oh, Leo, you've really painted a picture there. On one hand, Mexico's vibrant culture practically screams for you to jump and learn to cook mole poblano, practice your salsa steps until your feet ache, or maybe even track down an ancient Aztec drum circle. It's all about discovery and participation. Do you guys agree with us? I'm certain that our listeners living in Mexico would agree with me. There's always something new to try.
Discovery, yes. Participation, also yes. Participating in what the state wants you to participate in. I imagine if you tried to start a competitive bird-watching club in North Korea, you'd find yourself bird-watching from a very small, windowless room. Ouch! The level of specific interest probably peaks at knowing the exact number of buttons on a military uniform, or perhaps the complete history of a particular propaganda poster.
Well, speaking of exploring, I think even in very controlled environments, human curiosity finds a way. Oh, perhaps someone there has a very secret interest in collecting bottle caps. Or maybe they've mastered the art of perfectly folding laundry without anyone noticing. It's not about grand gestures, but the small personal joys. Although I can't imagine setting up a full-on K-pop dance-off in Pyongyang without some serious consequences. Oops.
A girl can dream, indeed. And probably should, because that's about the only place a North Korean K-pop dance-off is happening. My personal interest would be finding a good cup of coffee, and I'm pretty sure that's a heavily controlled substance there. Ouch. So yeah, for meeting your unique, quirky, utterly personal interests, Mexico seems to win by a landslide. Unless your specific interest is, say, living in a perfectly synchronized society with no external influences. Then, maybe North Koreans.
The perfectly synchronized society, huh? Oh, sounds like a complex dance, maybe a bit too complex for my two left feet. Ugh. Oh, on that note, my friends, this episode marks our farewell for now. We've covered so much, from security to specific interests. Well, after sharing all this in farewells and majority to specific interests. Well, after sharing off until our next comparison podcast. Please follow the channel for more miss wishes from us. Hit that mensae drop and be among the first to listen. We'd love for you to share your thoughts, comments.
A big thank you to Jet Off AI for making this possible. Wow, see you next time, friends, take care. Oh, and remember, whether it's chasing tortillas or avoiding synchronized routines, life's an adventure.